welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolf. That's the Hall of Famer Chris Carter. This is Nick Wright, and welcome to spring, everyone. Today is day one, and we know that because tomorrow there's supposed to be snow once again in the Northeast.
Cece, I jinxed us a little bit on the weather in New York. We were walking. It was a few days before Thanksgiving. I was like, you know what? Winter might just miss New York this year. I was wrong. Just came
so you
a little late.
You had a take that didn't quite land?
Didn't quite pan out. Didn't quite pan out. Not quite what I expected in mid-March.
But you're dressed the part. I'm dressed the part. You're dressed the part.
All of us.
Good
First
to go.
day of spring.
Yep. Anything you want to add to the as our Doppler weather guy?
Let's get to
Fun
the sports.
fact, LeBron James has been alive for 12,133 days. Of those days, he's been the best basketball player in the league, just under 12,133 days. Here's proof. Last night, in what could have been a trap game against a hungry Bucks team, he scored 40 points, grabbed 12 boards, dished 10 assists, and caused 4 in-game tweets from Nick Wright. Cavs beat the Bucks in a game where Kevin Love returned and added 18 points. Chris Carter, you wanted to dive in. We'll start with you. How impressed were you with LeBron last night?
More impressed than the weather in New York City. LeBron, it's just an ongoing thing. How impressed? I can't say I was even more impressed last night because this is where he's at. Like, this is what I expect to see from him. When they traded Kyrie Irving, and with all the injuries, and then the second trade before the trade deadline, this is what LeBron's got to do. Now, I'm more surprised that his body has been able to hold up, that he's been consistent the way he has been the last 30 days. So I wouldn't say I'm impressed with LeBron. It's been it's been a continuum of what we've been talking about. His overall ability to be able to play at this level, at this age, it's astonishing. But it just didn't happen because of last night. Last night was just, they got another player back in Kevin Love, which is able to spread the court, which makes it a lot easier for LeBron. But he's starting to find what he needs to do with this team. This is not a very talented team. They are not going to win unless LeBron plays like this. It's almost like when LeBron was in the finals with the Cavs.
In 07.
Or any of the finals with the Cavs.
Oh, okay.
Like, they will not win unless he plays this way. And in some of those cases, they didn't win anyway against Golden State. But this is how LeBron has to play for them to be able to win. I would say if I'm impressed by something, I'm impressed by the way he's taken the initiative offensively. LeBron is a pass-first ball player. He's probably, of the greatest players in the world all time, he's probably the most unselfish, him and Magic Johnson, of those two. So it's not his natural thing to say, I'm going to score. And sometimes I have a problem with that because he doesn't have the productivity there. He needs to score, and sometimes he defers to the other player. So I'm more impressed with his ability offensively to take the initiative. I'm not impressed with his rebounding, not impressed with his assists, because this is what LeBron has done. But his overall scoring and taking that initiative, I think is very, very important for him. And I believe that's helped elevate his game to a new level.
The reason yesterday was a particularly special performance in this stretch of unbelievable basketball by LeBron James. In February, he averaged a triple-double for the first time in his career for a month. This month, he is a couple assists away from averaging a triple-double. He's averaging 9.2 assists per game for this month, so he might do it in consecutive months. We saw how great he was in his last game out. The reason this one stands out is the circumstances surrounding it. You mentioned Kevin Love coming back. Kevin Love got injured before the trade deadline. So Kevin Love never played a game with George Hill, never played a game with Jordan Clarkson, never played a game with those two guys that played big minutes yesterday. Obviously, Rodney Hood and Larry Nance, the other guys they acquired, are out injured. But also the news yesterday about Ty Lue. The news yesterday where the head coach of the Cavs is going to take a leave of absence dealing with illness. And then also the opponent. A team they are likely to play in the first, I shouldn't say likely, but possible they play in the first round of the playoffs. Right now, the Bucks are the 7th seed, but easily could become the 6th seed. So it's who you're playing, it's the circumstances of the day, and it's the overwhelming performance. The third oldest player ever to have a 40-point triple-double. No player has ever had a 40-point triple-double this deep into their career, games-wise. It was the way he did take over the game whenever the Bucks made a mini run to come back towards them. LeBron, to me, it appeared, said, okay, all right, we're going to get this thing back up to 8, back up to 12. And this ended up being, it was a 17-point game with a couple minutes left before the Bucks made a run that was essentially meaningless. Like, to be playing at this level in year 15 when we are seeing around the league younger players, I should say around the league, but on his team and the Warriors, younger players who are dealing with 3 straight finals, much less 7 straight finals, either deal with mental or physical
even
injury.
if you exclude Golden State, this year in the NBA, there's been more games missed by the players than any game in recent history. So it speaks to, forget Golden State, the rest of the NBA, we've seen more guys get hurt than typically. Almost kind of a mirror of what we saw in the NFL this season when we saw all the injuries all the time. Now, not the catastrophic injuries in the NBA, but games missed are very, very important, and it helps tell part of the story where LeBron is right. The reason why I'm not impressed, when a guy averages a triple-double for a month, then he has another triple-double, been like, well, how are you impressed? Well, I just watched a month of triple-double. So I'm not trying to downplay what he did, but it's what I'm seeing almost every night except the 40 points. I thought that was really special.
So we all talk about how what you do in the regular season is one thing. Every team is going to have to step it up a gear in the postseason, no matter what, offensively or defensively. Does LeBron have another gear in him from what we're seeing?
This is the gear.
So is this the gear? This is what we're going to have to see. So this is the best the Cavs are playing right now?
Well, Rodney Hood's out injured. They don't have their first string or second string center. Obviously, they're just now getting Kevin Love back into the lineup. He came back a week early, which was good news for them. That was that kind of got buried early in the day yesterday with the Ty Lue news. But will LeBron play better than 29, 11, and 10 on 55% from the field and 42% from 3? That's what he's done since February 1. No, I don't think he'll play much better. I don't know if it's possible to play much better than that. But I think what is, to me, so impressive is LeBron had to engage the playoff mode early, and it doesn't seem to be wearing him down at all. Despite not missing a game, despite for the second straight year he's going to lead the NBA in minutes, he is able to just sustain this at a super high level continuously. And CC, you pointed out this article yesterday about a Navy SEAL he's worked with when LeBron was dealing with back issues a few years ago, and one of the reasons that's extended his prime to a level we've never seen a guy in year 15 do these types of things. You said the rebounds and assists don't impress you because you're used to it. He is now averaging a career high in rebounds and a career high in assists in year 15. We are running out of ways to say the word unprecedented because all of this is terrain we've never traversed before in the NBA.
Okay, so then let's just talk about Kevin Love coming back to the lineup. How much does he do, and how much did you see last night? And how much more confidence do you have in this team now that he's back?
I'm not going to say I have confidence in the team. This team can't win with absent of talent. Any NBA team, you add an all-star to the team's going to instantly get better. But when you talk about inside help, Tristan Thompson being out, Nance being banged up and injured, when you don't have another big man, so this was necessary. So when you don't have a big man, let alone an all-star big man, then also spacing on the court. You still have another knockdown shooter. In the 22 games Kevin Love missed, the offensive productivity, LeBron did not get help. As a team, they went 12 and 10, but 8 times he got the productivity of 20 points from a teammate. Now, that's why you want Kevin Love back in. Productivity. The guy is an all-star. All-stars aren't just walking down the street. So Cleveland, absent of Kevin Love, I mean, LeBron's all they have, and they have no chance of winning the championship without Kevin Love.
What I was most pleased about yesterday outside of LeBron was not just Kevin Love, but the fact that the Cavs found a way not only to win this game, but to score 124 points once again with no production from their starting guards. Corver was okay. George Hill was a 0, a literal 0 in the points category, and that is a storyline to watch. Because
now we're going to watch George Hill. Haven't I been warning you about George Hill?
The George Hill storyline to watch as far as what are you going to get from him in the postseason? Are you going to have to revert to LeBron essentially playing point guard and playing without a point guard? Because if you do that, you are shortening your available rotation from 8 or 9 guys to 6 or 7 guys. That is something you have to watch right now, particularly if the Cavs were to make the NBA Finals, where you know they're going up against either Steph Curry or James Harden. At least I believe you feel like you're going up against either Steph Curry or James Harden at point guard. Because at this point, Any production from J.R. Smith is a bonus. Like, I can't count on J.R. Rodney Hood, once again, has been the bugaboo for his career, nagging minor injuries. Nance, nagging injury this year, and now George Hill with nothing. Those are the 3 of the 4 guys you got in that trade. And Clarkson, to me, is a couple years away from where you could trust him in the playoffs. So that is something to watch as far as this team's ability, not necessarily to make the championship round, but to be able to compete in that championship round.
Here's some we haven't seen in a while. Carson Wentz throwing a football. Yesterday, video surfaced of Wentz breaking his sweat. And you know what I always say, nothing says I'm ready to come back from a torn ACL than a 12-second blurry video on Instagram. Reports are he's still targeting week 1 as a comeback date. CC, should Wentz change his playing style to avoid future injuries?
No, for what? Like, guys get hurt in the league. Tom Brady got hurt in the pocket. Do people tell him to change? No. Carson Wentz is not a scrambler. He is a pocket passer, a guy who's very, very athletic. At the combine, guy ran 4.7. Guy at 6'4", 230 pounds. No, he should do exactly what he's doing. You can't avoid that type of contact at the goal line. And that play that he actually got hurt on, it was unavoidable. There was nothing he could do. There's nothing he tried to split the defenders at the goal line. He couldn't have went up. He couldn't have went down low. Like, this is the price of doing business in the National Football League. So, no, I don't expect him. I expect him to actually get better. Of course, when people ask the question, because, yeah, they don't have nothing better to do. But other guys get hurt. What about Deshaun Watson? He got hurt.
Deshaun got hurt in practice. This is Wentz. Wentz was.
But he does run with the football.
He does run with the football. But Wentz was 3rd most in the NFL on designed runs per game as a quarterback, was 5th most on scrambles per game. So he does run more than every quarterback in the league, but 3 or 4 guys.
As a rookie, Carson Wentz had 150 yards rushing. He had 46 attempts. Now, you can't run that offense, the read option, without the quarterback on occasion keeping the ball. That's what makes the offense very effective, because you have a 3-way threat. That's what makes the offense really special. You put the ball in the running back's pouch. You let him fake it. The quarterback pulls it up. Throwing is one of the options, and running is one of the options. So, no, I don't believe that.
Well, CC, you mentioned his rookie at 150 yards, but last year he had 300 on 64 rushes. Like, so they don't. You wouldn't, if you were coaching him, you wouldn't adjust it at all, given the injury he suffered?
They actually expanded the playbook, and they had him running more last year. No, I wouldn't, because it's not going to help him from getting hurt. He's not Randall Cunningham. He's not RG3. Well, I need him to play fast. And when you're playing fast is when you're not thinking about things. Now, he doesn't put himself in harm's way. He doesn't run reckless. He knows how to slide. In watching the games, all right, it's different than taking someone's opinion on a guy getting hurt. When you watch Carson Wentz play, you don't think, wow, this guy's careless with the ball. Wow, this guy's going to have a short career. No, I don't think that. So for me, when you come back from an injury, number one thing you want to do is have your confidence back. So I wouldn't be putting that restriction on him immediately, because I've watched him play. I don't think he plays reckless, and I think his overall athletic ability is what attributes to how good he is as a player.
Just quickly, do you think maybe not design plays, but that he'd be more apt to sort of hold on to the ball than to go out and run it outside the pocket, knowing what happened to him last season? I mean, as an athlete that comes off an injury like this, are you more protective of that injury?
No. I mean, he tore his ACL. There's no way you can protect your ACL. They're going to put a brace on it.
You could limit the amount of scrambling you do. This
is the thing. He's going to be in the pocket anyway. You can tear your ACL in the pocket. You could tear it like Deshaun did, or other players have done. You know, to me, I know what it does to a player's psyche, all right? And a player can't play fast if he's thinking too much. And Carson Wentz is not a reckless guy. So, no, I wouldn't change him.
So then explain this part to me, because I look at I remember the 5th show we ever did, the Monday after the first weekend of the NFL season, because we had watched those games together. And this was before anyone knew Carson Wentz was going to be an MVP candidate in year 2. And I remember saying, listen, I had been agnostic on Carson Wentz going into year 2. I didn't know if I thought he was going to be really good, really bad in the middle. And what impressed me most about him was the plays he made that were off script, where he did avoid the rush.
Yeah, because most people didn't see Carson Wentz in college. Carson Wentz ran the ball a hell of a lot in college. And people don't realize how athletic athletic he is. If you look at Carson Wentz, Google his combine and Cam Newton's combine. You watch their measurables, height, weight, speed, power, explosion, they are almost exactly the same. Carson Wentz, Andrew Luck, and Cam Newton, they're all the same, even though they all look different. So that's the kind of athlete that we have playing quarterback for Philadelphia.
But the distinction between Carson, Cam, and Luck is Cam and Luck, neither of them have lost a season due to a knee injury running the ball. Like
if anyone would have gotten hit that way, they would have gotten hurt. Cam Newton would have gotten hurt if he gets hit that way.
So then explain to me, because this is where either something I don't understand or something that I'm missing. Explain to me the difference between Wentz and why he wouldn't change his style and the mobile quarterbacks that we have heard repeatedly told you have to change your style.
Who told them to change? What players are we talking about?
Any of the guys that run around a lot.
Who are they?
The RG3 has to change the style.
He had a slight body. He was undersized, and he was a 4'3" guy. Mm-hmm. Those guys don't last in the NFL. Michael Vick was an anomaly. He made it through. Who else made it through? Randall Cunningham changed his style. Who else made it through just scrambling?
I feel like
Steve Young, he changed to a pocket passer.
I feel right. Well, okay, so there you go. Hold on. So you're saying change to a pocket passer because
he didn't get hurt. He stopped because their system. Mm-hmm. He stopped running the ball as much and became a pocket passer.
So why are we not saying that about Wentz is my question. A guy that was top 4 in the league and rushes as a quarterback.
Because he's not playing a style that I believe is taking away from his ability. Steve Young was not a great passer. He concentrated on his passing so that he could be a great passer. There's a big difference between the two.
So you look at Wentz's injury just a freak accident, essentially. Nothing that his play style is.
I wouldn't call it freak. I would call it playing football.
Right, but it's not the way you don't look at that injury the way we look at injuries suffered by guys that run around a lot at the quarterback position, where we say, well, that's why you can't do that in the NFL. You look at that's not how you view what happened to Carson Wentz.
No, because he doesn't play that way. He's not reckless with the football, and they don't call unnecessary runs for him. I think it's a great balance for what they're trying to do. When you don't have the option of the quarterback running the ball, that's the reason why the offense sputtered with Nick Foles. Because the quarterback, the reason why they run that type of offense is to put the threat into the defense that the quarterback can run. Now, just because he hurt his ACL in a collision where he got snapped between two guys, which all 32 quarterbacks would have gotten hurt right there. So, no, I'm not going to change this.
I don't think anyone's doubting that all 32 quarterbacks would get hurt right there. I think the question is at least the question.
So if all 32 guys are in this situation.
No. Hold on. There's a difference. All 32 guys would have gotten hurt on that play. The question is, how many of the other quarterbacks would have tried to make that play? Right? The question is, how many of the other quarterbacks would have tried to make that play at the goal line as opposed to throwing it out the back of the end zone?
So now we're going to tell players in the NFL, if you have the chance to make the play, I don't want you to make the play. What do you want him to do?
Well, I don't know.
If you go back and watch that play with Carson Wentz, what was he supposed to do?
I don't know what he was supposed to do. But I feel like we tell guys when Andrew Luck.
I don't.
You mentioned Luck. Hasn't some of the commentary on Luck been he has to be smarter about the hits he takes?
We just say that because we're tired of talking about the offensive line. If they put a competent offensive line in front of him, Andrew Luck wouldn't have gotten hit like that. But because the offensive line talk is not sexy, let's tell Andrew to speed up his clock a little bit. But that's mismanagement from Indianapolis, the players they've drafted, the players they put in front of him, and the overall lack of running game. How many games has Andrew Luck had a 100-yard rusher?
I don't know.
Not a whole bunch.
We should also mention the Eagles they signed Michael Bennett. Michael Bennett's very excited. They should be happy Carson Wentz is up and throwing again. So we're going to talk a little bit about more what this means. The Eagles coming up a little bit later. But up next, the Texans added a big piece. But could they actually be contenders in the AFC? Next on First Things First. Sam Darnold's pro day is set for Wednesday. Rain expected in the area, but Darnold said he'll throw regardless. He's such a trooper. CC, you expect weather to impact Darnold's pro day at all?
No. Plus, he has no choice. When you don't throw at the combine and your pro day is scheduled, that's the last day NFL teams can see you work out. When you go for your team visit, each team can bring in 30 prospects. You don't get to work out on those days. You get to see the facilities, meet with the people, but the rain won't affect them. But, interesting question. High school seniors out there, why doesn't USC have an indoor facility with all the million-dollar alumni they got, all the pro ball players?
That's exactly what
I had an indoor facility when I was at Ohio State in '84. Now, they need to get with the times.
So that's what I was going to ask you. Why? But why don't they? Is it just because it's sunny and no rain in LA 360
No, they don't have
days
the
a year?
facilities. Their facilities overall are subpar. They just upgraded them. They just had a huge campaign to upgrade them, but they're one of the teams there's a powerhouse that they don't have the facilities, so they lose recruits based on things just like that.
Wow. It's unbelievable. I didn't realize they didn't have an indoor facility until this story came out yesterday. Like, he's going to have to throw in the rain. Why can't you go inside? No inside, I guess.
Line of the day. No inside, I guess.
Yeah, no inside.
Double overtime action in the NBA last night. The Heat beat the Nuggets 149-141. Seems like a random game. Nick, why is this such a big deal for the Nuggets?
Nuggets going to miss the playoffs, man. And when they miss the playoffs, they're going to look back to this game. They are now 2 losses behind the Timberwolves for the 8 seed, 1 loss behind the Clippers for the 9 seed, and the 9 seed doesn't even get you in. Their defense has been an abomination. Jokic is an extraordinary offensive player, but he gets abused on the defensive end night after night after night. To lose to a shorthanded Heat team in a game you have to have, and a game that doesn't really mean that much to Miami. Miami's locked into the playoffs. They're going to be the 7 or the 8 seed. Like, to lose this game when you have a chance to win it at the end of regulation, and then at the end of overtime, and then at the end of double, you can't have it. So when they miss the playoffs by a game, they're going to look back to last night.
That Western Conference, we knew someone would be left without a chair. Who's it going to be? Potentially the Denver Nuggets, but it could have been any of those teams. The Pelicans, the Timberwolves, Utah, all those teams. It's a sad story, but I think that Denver is the least talented of those teams in the West.
Absolutely.
Moving on to the Cavs. Kevin Love made his debut after being sidelined for nearly 2 months with a hand injury. Came back, scored 18 points. He had 7 rebounds in a win over Milwaukee. Cece, what'd you think of Kevin Love last night? How did he look in his return?
I really enjoyed it. Kevin Love's a guy that's really into fitness, too, so it was nice to see him on the court. His body looked in good shape. We know only through his revealing it that he dealt with some anxiety things, but for me it was good to see his smile on the face, him going into the locker room. Seemed like he had a little bounce in his step. I like Kevin Love as a basketball player. I know people there in Cleveland really like him as a person. So anytime you add an all-star, they got the rebound advantage last night. Wow, they didn't get killed in points in the paint last night. A lot of that is because of Kevin Love and him coming back.
And that's all those points in the paint rebounding stats are despite no Tristan Thompson, no Larry Nance. The threes he hit were big threes as well. People have probably seen the one that was from about 30 feet out. But it felt to me every time Milwaukee was making a run, either LeBron scored 4 in a row or Kevin Love hit a big 3. He also seems to be having fun. We couldn't play the clip because it's so hard to see, but it's going viral on the internet. At one point, he gets knocked down on a three-pointer and does like a backstroke up the court, laying down for reasons someone needs to ask him about. I don't quite understand it. Love had a good time.
Happy.
And it was his first game with the new-look Cavs. They looked pretty good.
Finally, the Sixers beat the Hornets 108-94. Ben Simmons had a triple-double, including 15 assists, no turnovers. Simmons became just the 3rd NBA rookie to do that. Nick, how dangerous can the Sixers be if they get to the playoffs? Well, in the playoffs.
Yeah, in the playoffs, they can be a problem in the first or second round for most teams. Because what they have right now is Ben Simmons, who, yes, he's a rookie. When you see 15 assists, 0 turnovers, no rookie's done that in 20 years.
Amazing.
And it's only been done twice in the last 35 years by a rookie. He's an odd rookie because he had the redshirt year. And now he's 70 games into year 2. So he's obviously not a veteran, but he's not going to be stunned by the bright lights of the postseason. So you have that at point guard, a 6'10 point guard. You then have Embiid, who is a matchup problem for every team in the league. Every team in the league, aside from some teams that aren't going to make the playoffs, like the Clippers. Yeah, you know what? You could put DeAndre Jordan up against him and see what you can do. The Pistons, you could put Andre Drummond up against him, see what you can do. Well, those teams aren't in the playoffs. When you look at who Embiid could be going up against in the first or second round of the Eastern Conference playoffs, that is going to be a matchup nightmare for whomever they draw. Now, Philly could go as low as they are right now, the 6th seed. They also theoretically could jump all the way to the 3 seed. They have 30 losses. The Cavs at 3 seed. They have 29 losses. So we don't know what that matchup will be, but nobody wants to draw Philly in the first round. I promise you that.
I know Philly don't want to draw Cleveland in the first round either, because you talk about Ben Simmons as a point guard, point forward. he'd have to guard LeBron James.
Correct.
They have no answer for LeBron James. So right now, as we stand, Cleveland 3, them at 6, Cleveland's going to give them the business in the first round. Now, yes, they are promising. He did have 15 assists, no turnovers. Yes, but playing LeBron in their first playoff experience, this would be a quick trip to the playoffs for the 76ers.
But let me ask you something separate. If the Cavs either fall to the 4 line or if they don't draw the Cavs in the first round, let me put it like that rather than go through the different machinations. If they draw Washington in the first round, I think the Philly would be a favorite over Washington.
Depends if John Wall comes back. Is he totally out because of John Wall? Because I believe they can give Philly problems, too, at the point guard. All right? They would have a problem with John Wall and the pace. The one thing I want to watch in the playoffs, I know you've talked about Joel Embiid and the mismatch. What I'm concerned about is NBA refereeing. They do not give the big man the benefit of the doubt. If you're on the perimeter, you cannot touch a guy. In the paint, they allow you to hammer, push, and everything. I don't know if he can dominate a game with the playoff style. I don't think they're going to let him dominate the game. Based on the way the refs call the game, he's going to get fouled not quite as often as other perimeter players. So in that, it slows down the offense. The ball doesn't stop moving because right now they don't isolate him on the box a lot. So if he was to play against Kevin Love, how's he going to dominate the game with the style for which the referees don't call it? And that's not a style that Philly does not say, get on the box.
No, they want to go.
We're going to throw it in you 20 times. If that was their style, I would be more concerned. But they kind of play into the opposition's hands by allowing him to play out on the perimeter, which for Kevin Love or Tristan Thompson, that would be to their benefit.
That's a good point. All right, let's go back to some football. Don't look now, but the Houston Texans could be pretty good next year. They signed former Cardinals defensive back Tyrann Mathieu yesterday to a 1-year, $7 million deal. Okay, now you can look. He joins a defense that features J.J. Watt, Jadeveon Clowney, and Whitney Merciless. Mathieu says he's excited for the opportunity.
Well, I just want to prove my point that I'm, one of the best safeties in this league. Obviously, I had some setbacks. I had some challenges, and, I try to, take those challenges head on. I just want to come to a group where guys were hungry. Obviously, I'm very hungry at this point in my career. I wanted to come to a team that had great potential, a team that was dominant on defense, and I think I made the right choice.
All right, Cece, if the Texans are all healthy, how big of a contender are they?
Oh, absolutely. They're in the mix. I mean, if you talk about the AFC South, Jacksonville dominated that division last year. We got Luck that was out in Indianapolis. We got Frank Wright going to be his coach. I expect Luck to be back and for them to be back in the playoff picture. Tennessee made it as a wild card team, losing in New England. So to think Houston is not as good as Indianapolis or better and Nashville, absolutely they are. So we know that. He made the right decision because he went to a team that can rush the quarterback. All right? I don't care if guys are hungry. If you don't have no guys rushing the quarterback, the Honey Badger's not going to be best suited in that situation. Their offense, if they can stay on the field and have some type of ball control, we know Deshaun's going to come back, and they're going to be prolific throwing the ball. Will Fuller, Nuke Hopkins, DeAndre Hopkins there, they have one of the most explosive offenses if they're able to find a running game. So, to me, I like this signing. What if they add a guy like Adrian Peterson late? He's from outside of Houston.
Where he wants to go.
If they can get him for cheap, add him to that roster. Houston is a team that I believe for the first time in Bill O'Brien's tenure there, that they can reach their potential. They can get after the quarterback. Jadeveon Clowney, in the last year of his contract, they're going to have to sign him to a monster contract coming off his most impressive year so far. So, yes, Honey Badger, I thought, made a great decision going to Houston.
When you look at the Texans, we don't talk about the Texans a ton, but I'll mention a team we talk about a lot. The Dallas Cowboys, they're like the opposite of them. The Cowboys have this awesome offensive line and this great running game with weaknesses on other spots of the ball. Don't have dynamic receivers. Don't have defensive players where you're like, oh, my God, what are you going to do? The Texans have all those things the Cowboys don't, with one of the least accomplished offensive lines in football. And as of now, if we're talking about bringing in Adrian Peterson, that gives you an idea that, it's Alfred Blue and Lamar Miller. And Lamar Miller right now, he's playing on a big running back contract, but he has not matched his production that he had in Miami. They have real questions up front on offense. But man, oh man, this defense, the key word is healthy. If healthy, is terrifying. People forget they lost Whitney Merciless last year as well. He only played 5 games with a torn pectoral. He was a double-digit sack guy. He led the nation in sacks coming out of the University of Illinois. Clowney is one of the best two-way D linemen in football as far as tackles for loss and quarterback pressures. He's been a much better run defender than I thought he would be. And then there's J.J. Watt, who, when healthy, is Defensive Player of the Year.
But the when healthy is not in small fonts.
No. I mean, JJ's played 8 games in the last 2 seasons.
No, he need to change his style.
Well, I don't know what he can do. Like, because if you look at JJ's 2 separate injuries, like the reason he lost the year 2 years ago, he had back surgery. Then last year, I looked it up, tibial plateau fracture. So that means the top of his shin bone, where it connects to the joint, that's what broke. Those are 2 major injuries. And where a guy who had been an Ironman, had played every game of his career or every season of his career without missing a game, to only play 8 of the last 32, it's a big but, without even mentioning their starting quarterback has now torn an ACL in both knees, coming off the left ACL tear in college at Clemson and now the right ACL tear at practice as a pro last year.
If healthy, do you put this defense up with the Jaguars, Vikings, Eagles? I mean, some of those caliber defenses.
Their secondary is not as good. Their front is good. Their linebackers aren't as good either as Minnesota's linebackers. Minnesota's got better linebackers in a good secondary. Jacksonville has decent linebackers, very, very fast, good in run and pass situations, and an extremely impressive secondary, especially their corners. So there's a little difference in how those teams match up with Houston.
The Texans spent their free agent money this offseason on that secondary. They added Aaron Colvin to compete, probably to take the spot of Jonathan Joseph, who has been playing forever in this league. And then they also added Tyrann Mathieu. Now, by the way, Matthew's another guy that we have to put the if healthy. The reason he's available for only $7 million a year, I believe, is because of the concerns about his health. Because when he's out there and playing, he's to me, a dominant, multi-purpose guy that can cover you in the nickel, that can play safety. He can do everything you want your safety to do. If Tyrann stays healthy, to you, does that raise the secondary up a notch? Because it does to me.
Of course, with the multiple offenses, not being able to guard the tight end and the running back, yeah, he's the best strong safety that they have. His versatility and what it brings to the defense. Also, let's not forget, he's one of the best blitzers from a secondary position that we have in the league. So you have all that heat that they can bring with Clowney, Merciless, J.J. Watt, and then now you got a guy that can come off that nickel slot and be able to put pressure on the quarterback. I think it's exciting things for the Houston Texans.
There's a lot of question marks with all those injuries. Either they're going to be super healthy,
style.
or
I don't know how you change your style as a defensive player. As a defensive player, it's a little different. What are you going to do? Call
Dusty, you hear that?
Or they're going to be, I have a joke. Or they're going to be the Warriors.
Oh, and we'll get to it next time, Jenna.
Yeah, because that's what we're going to talk about. Are the Warriors rushing back Steph Curry too soon? It would have worked really well if the whole sentence was one sentence as opposed to 8 fragmented ones. That's next on First Things First. Here on First Things First, we are now joined by former NBA All-Star and champion Antoine Walker.
Nice to see you, Antoine.
Hey, Antoine, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me on the show.
All right, did you hear about the Warriors? Because they're suffering from a bad case of, everyone got hurt. Steph, Clay, KD did not play last night, and Draymond didn't play the second half in a loss to the Spurs. Warriors are reportedly targeting Friday for Steph Curry's return from ankle injury. He's tweaked that ankle multiple times this season. So, Antoine, with all these injury concerns, you still think, or do you think the Warriors are better than the Houston Rockets heading into the postseason?
No, I don't think they're better than the Houston Rockets. And there's a number of reasons why I think that. I think, one, Houston is doing something that we haven't seen in the last 4 years, that Golden State. They're going to make them play on the road. Game 5 and 7, important games. We haven't seen it. And also, Houston roster's gotten a lot better. The best roster Golden State can put on the floor is with Draymond Green at center. Houston can play five small guards now with P.J. Tucker, Trevor Ariza, Bunawute. They got some small guys now. They can play 5 guys with Draymond Green at the center, with him at the center spot to match up. And then also, you got to like the fact that they got another playmaker in Chris Paul. You know, it takes a lot of pressure off James Harden when you got Chris Paul who's having an exceptional year, who can create too. So I like where Houston's at right now. I believe if they get home court advantage, they can actually beat Golden State.
And they got it now. The home court is over. I mean, Draymond after the game said we're locked into the 2 seed. So, I mean, Houston's going to be the 1 seed.
I want to go back to a person you mentioned because I think that we talk about him, but maybe not in depth. Chris Paul. Like, who is Chris Paul? And what are we going to see that's going to be able to allow this Houston team to be able to get over the hump? As a former NBA champion, as a guy that Chris Paul looks like one of those glue guys. What is it about Chris Paul that you believe is a tangible thing that gives them an edge?
Well, knock on wood, hopefully he stays healthy. He doesn't get hurt over these next couple of weeks. If he goes in healthy, he should have a chip on his shoulder. He's yet to play in the Western Conference Finals. He's yet to play in the NBA Finals. So he should be motivated. He should take this challenge on personal. This is the best team he's played on. So I look at that situation. And then he's having a great year. I mean, his three-point shooting has been incredible this year. I've never seen him shoot the basketball like he shot it this year. He should have been an all-star, but he wasn't. He missed so many games early in the season. So I just think he's got a chip on his shoulder and he's ready to go.
There's one other aspect of them having Chris Paul that in the matchup against the Warriors is so critical. Who's Steph guarding now? Like that is the thing. Like when the Rockets and Warriors have played in the past in the playoffs, Steph doesn't have to guard James Harden. Clay guards James Harden. And Steph guards Eric Gordon's a good player, and he guards Eric Gordon, or he guards Patrick Beverly, who is not an offensive threat. You can hide Steph on the non-offensive guard you could have in the past and not have to worry about him being a liability on defense. If you have Chris Paul and James Harden, which they do, as their starting backcourt, Steph got to guard somebody. You can't put him on a 3, obviously. They'll just back him down. So who is Steph going to guard? Because my guess is he'll guard CP3. That's not a good matchup for him.
He probably start off, but I think they're going to hide him. I think he's going to guard Trevor Ariza. And I know this doesn't sound like the most likable matchup.
No.
But Trevor Ariza is a guy that's going to spot up in the corner on the offensive end for threes. I think they're going to try to hide him. I don't think you can – Houston, you can't just change your identity and just try to feature Trevor Ariza in the post. So you're going to continue to put him out there. But I think they're going to hide him.
So if they put Steph on Trevor Ariza, do you then think Clay would guard CP3 and Durant would guard Harden? Like, because I'm just curious, in that situation, I'm trying to think in my head.
Let's go to the best lineup Golden State can have.
Oh, with Iggy out there? Okay,
with
sure.
Andre Iguodala. So let's think about that's the lineup that's going to play.
Point.
That's going to play the bulk of the minutes. So that's what you're going to see. He can hide him in that lineup. Because I'm looking at that's the only way you can beat Golden State. You got to be able to play against their small unit with Draymond Green at the 5. That's where they've been the most successful over the last 4 years. Is him at the 5 position.
There's one other way to beat Golden State, and that's if none of these 4 guys come back. So do the Warriors need all 4 of their stars in this lineup to win a title, do you think?
Oh, without
no
question.
doubt. Yes.
The West is totally different. You know what's kind of crazy? I mean, neither one of these teams better hope Oklahoma City don't end up playing them in the playoffs. Oklahoma City is going to be a tough out.
Yeah, they trending right at the right time.
I don't like anybody else in the West to put pressure on them, but OKC. When you got 3 dynamic players like that can play and they can score the basketball in the playoff series where you shorten the rotation, I like OKC against one of these teams to take them at least a deep series, like 6 or 7 games.
So you think if they were to, you think Oklahoma City in the second round is a tougher out for one of these teams than Portland?
Yeah. I'm interested in the game tonight. Obviously, you got Portland playing Houston tonight. Both teams on winning streaks. Portland's won 13 in a row, so it'll be interesting to see how that matchup goes. But Portland still lacks they don't have a 3-man. You know, they got a great center, they got a great backcourt, but when you get to the 3 and 4 position, they struggle in that position. So when you get into a playoff series, I don't think they can beat Houston or Golden State. But OKC, Mark, remember I tell you this, OKC is going to be in the mix.
You mentioned at the very beginning that Golden State is going to have to go on the road for games 5 and 7. They're also going to have to go on the road. I always focus on the beginning of the series because what we've never seen is Golden State having to start a series in a hostile environment. I'm trying to think, in the last 3 years, have they started a series? I think only the Memphis series where they lost game 1. The Memphis series, I know they were down 2-1 in that series, but typically they start at home, they get out, you know what I mean? They're up in the series, and you're chasing them throughout. How much does starting the series on the road, if anything, matter to you?
It means a lot. I mean, you can go down 0-2 is tough. I was in the finals down 0-2, but luckily the format was different. The format was 2-3-2.
Yes.
So it's different now. So you go down 0-2, and they never faced that type of pressure. You got to put Golden State in pressure that they never faced before in order to take them out their comfort zone. They've had the easy road for the last couple of years where they've controlled everything. Now they got some injuries. They got to try to get guys back in shape. You don't know how long these guys are going to be out. This is going to be a tough road, tough championship for them to get this
Are
year.
you worried about them? Are you you worried that these guys aren't going to be ready when the postseason starts?
Yeah, without question, because you hurt. And you obviously now you don't have no practice time. You're not going to practice right now.
Right.
So everything is going to be little bike work, walkthroughs, just getting shots up. And you're not going to – and the intensity goes to another level come playoff time.
When KD comes back, if you're playing against a guy who you know is coming back from a rib injury, how does that – is it a little extra bumping? What do you do as a player if the guy you're checking just came off a rib injury?
I played in a different era.
So
my
the
era,
real NBA.
My era, we're going to put pressure on him. We're going to bump him and do all those things.
Donkey kick that.
But now I think, Kevin's tough. I mean, he's not been a guy that's been injury prone throughout his career. Obviously, he had his foot injury, but he's played. He'll be tough and be ready for that. But I think, obviously, you got to put pressure on him. You got to be physical with him. You got to try to take him off his spots. But I don't think he's going to see that to the second round. And obviously, if they get to the Western Conference Finals. All
right, Antoine, stick around. We got more coming up. How does LeBron James keep getting even better in year 115? That's next on First Things First. Hi, everyone, and welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolf. That's the Hall of Famer, Chris Carter. That is Nick Wright. And on the second day of spring, we are just moments away from a Jagunda nor'easter here in New York City.
Giant snowstorm coming.
Come on.
But CC, a giant snowstorm's coming. CC did some Hall of Fame hands pre-show. I don't quite know why, but there was if people knew what it took to get this football to sit perfectly the way it is right now without moving, that was done at the last possible second.
Rule changes, so we changed the desk a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Got a little Barkley, maybe New York blue, maybe coming to New York, little headlines from the days, and then the football.
I like
to get it started.
I like it. Absolutely right.
Crazy things happening here.
Yes.
Crazy things. We bounced a football and put a newspaper on the desk. What are we going to do tomorrow?
Jenna's got curls in her hair.
Stand by. But I
Yes.
don't have a pen is what I don't have. There you go.
Yeah, you do.
What a team. All right, let's start the show. Two of the hottest teams in the history of the universe, also the NBA this season. They both faced off last night. It's the Blazers, winners of 13 in a row, and the Rockets, winners of 22 of their last 23. One of the lesser-known rules in the NBA, guys, game can't end in a tie. This one went to the Rockets, thanks in large part to James Harden and his 42 points. Rockets now own a 4-game lead in the Western Conference. Chris Carter, I'll start with you with all that balancing. How will you answer this? Is it time to consider the Houston Rockets the favorites to win the NBA title?
Well, I think many have looked at this, and we started the conversation before Golden State got injured. Will Golden State, how important is the number 1 seed? And then we start seeing Steph got hurt. And then we're like, how important is it to have Steph back? So now it's kind of evolved to, Golden State, are they as good as Houston with guys being injured? Well, now let's get down to it. Well, who is the favorite? The team that's played the best, typically, they would be the favorite. That's not the case. In the Eastern Conference, we've seen Toronto. They've dominated the East. They've improved their team, their overall bench, but people aren't going to give them credit for it. Now, in the West, because Houston, they've changed their roster, and they've changed the style for which they play. Does this style match up more with Golden State? I would say yes. Are we going to give them credit for how they've played for 6 months? Like, at some point, we have to give them credit. Yes, this is the best team in the NBA, but are they the favorite? They're not the favorite because the champ, you still got to knock the champ out. The champ has all the experience. The champ, we should rightfully, because they're NBA champs. Houston is the best team. Are they the favorite? I don't think they should be the favorite until we see Golden State either not healthy, Golden State gets down in a series. I can understand, but I'm giving Houston credit for how good they've been. But being a champion, being a multiple champion that Golden State is, given that all their players are going to be back, I would say just to play on the word, yes, I'm much respect to Houston. But Golden State is still the champ, and until Houston knocks them out, that's what I'm going to say. Golden State should still be the favorite, as long as they go into the playoffs healthy.
What's the difference then, Nick, between the best team in the NBA and the favorite team in the NBA?
Well, I understand CC's distinction, which is right now the Rockets have played the best. Right now the Rockets are the healthiest, so right now they're the best team. But that doesn't mean if right now, if all things were equal, if they played each other, CC would pick the Rockets to beat the Warriors. So that's his distinction, that the Warriors are still, in his eyes, the favorite
because
over
of
Houston.
the championship pedigree.
Because of the championship pedigree.
All the things that they've been through, we need to consider that compared to, are we just going to look at what's happened in this basketball
and that's
season.
Full Warriors strength, full Houston strength, not where they are right now. Okay.
Yes.
And so I understand that distinction, and I think that is a fair distinction to draw. I do not think the best team has to be always the favorite. I think a great example is the East. Toronto clearly has been the best team in the East this year. I will never believe they're the favorite to win the East till they got 3 wins in a series and they're up with a few seconds left on the Cavs. So I understand that distinction. I no longer think that distinction applies to the Western Conference. I think Houston is the best team, and I think as we sit here on the second day of spring, March 21st, I believe the Houston Rockets are the favorite to win the NBA championship. I think we have a sample size of nearly a full season. We have a sample size of exactly a half season of Harden, Paul, Capella playing. 41 games they've played together. They're 39-2. We have seen Houston play the next 8 teams in the West. So 7 of those teams will make the playoffs. But teams 2 through 9 in the West this year, they are 21-3. And if we are going to go to historically, the Rockets almost assuredly this year will win at least 65 games. They need to go 8-3 or better down the stretch to get to 65 wins. Why do I point out 65 wins? 65 wins have happened 20 times in NBA history. 15 of those times, that team has won the championship. So we are getting to historical markers with this basketball team. We already talked about how their offense, right now it dropped a tick, so it's no longer the greatest offense in NBA history. It's like the second greatest offense in NBA history. But the 3 in the other top 4 all won a championship. We are talking about historical regular season greatness from a team that, even if I remove the historical lens, I just look at it as a basketball fan in 2018. The one thing I cannot find with the Rockets is what they're missing, aside from something they can't grab right now, which is experience, championship pedigree. The one thing they're missing, they're ineligible to get during the regular season.
Said.
So let's just look at this guy up here, because there have been moments where we've considered James Harden a phenomenal player, but slightly maybe underrated because he hasn't fully been able to prove himself in the postseason. Based on everything you've watched in the regular season, what he's been able to do, how he's been able to work with Chris Paul when people were wondering how these two would work together this season, do you still think is a bit underrated?
No, he can't be underrated. I mean, if you watch the games and you see what Harden is doing, he's the best offensive player in the NBA. And I believe that the players that they have around him, and I talk about this quite often, styles, team styles, and James Harden. James Harden, he's got more versatility to his game and his teammates that he's playing with. You have to give them so much respect. And the way D'Antoni has the offense and the way they close out games, the way they do the pick and roll just to get the mismatch compared to trying to pick and actually roll old school basketball. Like, they pick and roll to get a matchup to make guys switch, Jenna, to get Harden on anyone he wants on the court. And they have the shooters to build a space to court. He breaks down that defender better than anyone right now in the NBA. So Harden, man, you have to give Harden respect.
The only reason James Harden won't be, and pardon me, the only reason James Harden won't be the unanimous MVP this year, which has only been done once, Steph did it, LeBron was a vote away from doing it a few years ago, is because some people don't like his style. Some people don't like the herky-jerky, slow motion.
His ability to draw fouls on people. It's a style, too, that's unorthodox. And most of the great players, they don't have that.
Isn't that a skill or is that a style?
No. It's an enormous skill. I'm just saying.
Develop.
You got 120 people that are going to vote for this award. There are 4 or 5 of them, I believe, that don't like watching Harden play. So they're like, I'm going to vote for Anthony Davis.
Aesthetically.
Aesthetically. Just simply don't like. But Harden is clearly going to win the MVP this year. And now we've got a 4-year sample of Harden's play, where I do think it's fair to ask, is he underrated nationally? Most people believe the hierarchy goes like this. LeBron 1, KD 2, Steph 3, and then a scrum for that next spot. Harden, Anthony Davis, Kawhi when he's healthy. Some people love Russ. The shine's come off him a little bit this year. But the last 4 years, Harden's gone second, ninth, and now first in MVP voting. I'm assigning that to him. I think show Harden. Let me do one of those blind reveals. That's Harden versus someone over the last 4 years. That's not this year. 4 years cumulative. Harden's beating him in points, trailing slightly in rebounds, beating him soundly in assists, nearly identical PERs. That's over a 4-year sample. Show me who that guy is. The guy everyone says is the second best player in the world.
That's interesting.
James Harden has as good of an argument as Steph, as good of an argument as Durant, that he is the second best player in the world.
So why do we talk about Durant in a totally different class than we do James Harden?
I think we've liked Durant. Durant has less holes in his game than Harden had up to this point.
Up to this point.
The way I think also the pieces for which he's playing with, I think that we had Durant and Harden very, very close to each other until we saw Durant last season in the postseason against LeBron and with the Warriors and being the MVP. I think that was kind of one of the stamps of approval the public gave to Kevin Durant. Harden hadn't had that moment. Nick, to your point, as far as his unorthodox style and people not liking that style, there's also people that don't like Durant's style. They don't like LeBron's style because he complains. Harden complains. But man, for me to stay up, for the hours that we're working, for me to stay up and watch them play last night, I'm going to tell you, you got to be a special ball player. And that's where Harden is right now. It's a developed style that also has been cultivated by the offensive system that they have in Houston and the players that they have put around him. It is time for James Harden to shine. He has never played better with his teammates, and that style has never been developed where he can take advantage of NBA defenses, more so than any point I've seen in James's career.
And the other reason that he has been considered a tier beneath Durant, other than the defense, which, by the way, that obviously wasn't shown on that graphic. Durant is a better defensive player, and we have to be fair on that, is because prior to this year, Harden had never been the best player on a team that you credibly thought could win the championship. Durant had been the best player on a number of teams that you credibly thought, whether it was in Oklahoma City or Golden State, you credibly thought could win the championship. But I want to quote Daryl Morey on one thing. He said this on a panel I moderated at the Sloan Analytics Conference. And when he said it, the crowd kind of drew back. But I've been thinking about it. He said, in James Harden, we have the best isolation player in NBA history. Now, when you start saying best in NBA history, you start thinking, okay, let's think about how Kobe was in isolation. Jordan didn't do a ton of isolation because of the offense they're running. Like you're thinking about it. But then you watch the Rockets at the end of games. How do they close out games? James Harden.
Yes.
And how's it worked out for them, at least thus far this year? It's worked out to where they're pacing to win 66 games.
The only guy I would compare him to, and it's hard to compare him because one's a post player, my man Isaiah Thomas says, Kareem.
Oh, okay.
If you say that ISO is throwing it into the post, which is a little bit different. He's the only guy you can, I think, actually compare him to.
And you have to think that the narrative changes a little bit if James Harden does go ahead and win the title. Then we start talking.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Then you start talking about him historically among shooting guards. Him versus Dwayne Wade. Him versus Kobe. It changes.
What is the headline on the paper, CeCe?
Lose Clues.
Yes. Barkley.
Lose Clues. We're talking about Saquon Barkley coming up next. All right, new topic to the NFL draft. Penn State held their pro day yesterday, but running back Saquon Barkley did not take part in the Penn State pro day yesterday. No NFL running back coaches showed up, so Saquon decided not to participate. Many are wondering if he's the best player in the draft. Don't worry, he isn't wondering that. He knows. Here he is, talking with Kim Jones.
Do you think you're the best player in this draft?
Yes, ma'am.
No doubt.
Yes, ma'am.
You're going ma'am on me, so I know you're serious. But top pick, top 2 picks, top 5 picks, do you set a goal?
No. The mindset I have that it don't matter where you draft me. I can tell you you're going to get a guy that's going to come in and it's going to work. That's how I got here, and that's the only thing I know. I can't promise you Rookie of the Year. I can't promise you 2,000 yards, but I can promise you that I'm going to come in and you're going to get a leader. You're going to get guys who's a competitor who's passionate about the game, and the rest are going to take care of itself.
What a well-spoken young man he is at this
Mature
at this
beyond
point.
his years, it appears.
He really is, and he's not even out of college. All right, CeCe, how confident are you that Saquon Barkley is, call it a can't-miss NFL star?
Well, ma'am, there's not a lot of can't miss.
Don't even think about it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay?
There's not a lot of...
I may be only a few years younger than you, but I am still younger.
I got you. That's the way my mom raised me. But good question, ma'am.
It's not landing
miss,
well.
It's really hard to put on a prospect coming into the league. But as far as a guy who I believe has the perfect transition skills and let alone forget his maturity. Like, I'm not even going to get to that part. Just his pure football skills as a runner, running between the tackles, as an elusive runner, being able to score from anywhere on the field, as a pass receiver, coming from college football and being able to catch the football, a special teams player, an elite special teams player, dangerous. If you kick the ball to him on a kickoff, as we watch Ohio State, the first play of the game, man, he takes it back to the house. So he's proven himself in a league that running backs, being the Big Ten, they transfer over to the NFL as good as any conference that we've seen. We see what they have in Dallas, in Zeke, what they have in Pittsburgh. These are two of the four best running backs in the league, all-purpose-wise. They came from the Big Ten. So you can look at his stats, what he did in the Big Ten, how he played, and I see that transfers over. His overall attitude and loving football. He doesn't care where he's drafted. Yes, he should think he's the best player in the draft because he's proven that, being consistent at the college level. And from talking to the coaching staff there, they say he's even a better person. He's a great leader in the locker room. He holds all the records from weightlifting, sprinting, all those things that people deem to be important. He's got them, and he's got them in spades. So I'm looking forward to his transition to the National Football League because I believe forget a can't-miss prospect. I believe he is a bright star in a league that needs more stars like him.
Before I answer the question, I want to ask you one question because you every time we've talked about Saquon, you've talked about a part of his game that you focus on more than anyone that I hear talk about this player, and some people just ignore it entirely, which is the special teams component, which is how he can impact the game, not when your offense is on the field, but in the special teams component. He's going to be a top 5 pick somewhere. You would be comfortable, and tell me why you'd be comfortable using him in the special teams game, because we typically don't see guys that teams consider their A-plus assets in the special teams game. You'd be comfortable with Saquon there. How come?
Because he's special. He's special when he gets the ball in space. And if you're going to give me 3 or 4 more opportunities, given the rules in the NFL, the way they have moved the kicking game back, seeing that he's proven, he makes people miss. He doesn't get hit hard a lot. Leonard Fournette, you saw him in college football. He got hit hard a lot in his rookie year. He struggled with some nagging injuries. But when you don't have a guy who's going to get hit an awful lot, he's not going to get solid contact. They're not going to, because he's elusive like that. You utilize him because on the first day, there's no play you have to call. It's kick the ball off. He catches it. They run some type of scheme to be able to get him. And I believe it's an instant impact to the NFL right now.
So as far as I don't know that it's ever fair to call a player can't miss in this regard. I remember the Oakland Raiders, and this is going to be a name no one has thought of in 15 years. But the Raiders, they were going to finally be smart in the draft. They weren't going to take the fastest guy. They weren't going to take the flashiest guy. They were going to take the safest, can't-miss prospect. His name was Robert Gallery, a number 2 overall pick at left tackle. Now, he ended up having a long career, and he's transitioned to right tackle. It was fine. But we thought he was the safest can't-miss guy, and he, of course, never became the franchise guy. So there's never 100%, but is he the closest thing that we have in this draft as to a guy that I am confident will be a Pro Bowl player in this league? Absolutely. Of course, always barring injury. He is a guy, because of the position that he plays, that I think his transition will be the easiest, and I think he can make the most instant impact. And one last point, compared to some of these other star running backs we've seen coming out, I think he is least reliant on a great offensive line because of how he can help you. You said in the special teams game, but also catching the football.
Yes.
We saw the difference between Leonard Fournette, good, bad offensive line, where Todd Gurley's a better example, good, bad offensive line. I don't think he will be as much of a victim to his circumstances as some of those other players.
He's also the safe bet from a process of elimination. You could poke holes in all the top 3 or 4, 5 quarterbacks that you have going right now, that no one is like the sure bet fired thing. No one has poked a ton of holes in Saquon Barkley's game up to this point. All right, coming up, changes are coming to the catch rule. CC knows nothing about that, so we will not ask him one thing about it.
This hurt me. This hurt me.
Oh, I'm so happy.
The bar is up to here.
Man, this hurts.
All right, to the NFL now. And Ndamukong Suh is set to continue his free agent tour. He visited with the Rams yesterday. He'll visit with the Raiders today. Raiders is an interesting choice for him. CC, would Suh be a good fit in Oakland?
Ooh, Man, I think that if you look at veteran players, for me, veteran players have always gone to the Raiders and kind of been able to live up to that skull and crossbones type of image. I think with John Gruden, you need a couple dirty guys. You need some guys going to cause a little chaos, and I believe John Gruden and Ndamukong Suh can be one of those guys. Now you got to put him on a tight leash because he will stomp a dude's face. He will stomp you on Thanksgiving. So, yes, when you are the Raiders, you do need some edge players. Edge meaning on the fringe of the rules. And Ndamukong Suh is definitely one of those players.
Man, when we heard he was getting cut by the Dolphins, I said I thought the Rams would be the best fit for him. He visited one yesterday. We'll see what he does. But I said that before the Rams traded for Marcus Peters, signed Aqib Talib. You got Marcus Peters, Aqib Talib, and Ndamukong Suh in a locker room. That might be a little too much for my man Wade Phillips to handle.
Yeah,
so
I don't know who the team chaplain is there, but they're going to be busy.
And they're going to need someone to pray for them. For the team chaplain.
Yes.
So the Raiders, listen, you guys know I'm not bullish on some of the moves John Gruden has made. I happen to think Suh has a little more left than a lot of people do. I think Suh, if it's less than $8 million a year, that's about the threshold I would put it at, could be a good value for the right team. So we'll see where he ends up.
All right, to the draft now. Former UCLA
I think that's
quarterback.
less money he made at Nebraska.
Josh Rosen worked out for the Browns and the Giants on Tuesday. Browns have the top pick, Giants second pick in the draft. Total coincidence that he worked out for him. Nick, any chance Rosen is taken top 2 in the draft?
Oh, absolutely. I don't think Cleveland's going to take him. At this point, I would say Sam Darnold is a favorite versus the rest of the field to go number 1. The question is, would the Giants take him? Or would a team give the Giants an enormous package of picks to get up to number 2 so they can take him? I think that is absolutely in play, that Josh Rosen is the second pick of the draft. You know that if I were running the Giants, I would take him number 2. I, unfortunately, am not running the Giants, though, so I cannot guarantee
Right, and not because I don't like them, but I follow the guys that follow the draft, and this is the quarterback that we've least talked about going to Cleveland. We talked about Josh Allen. We talked about Sam Darnold. And I don't think it helped him, his comments during the season, as far as playing in Cleveland. Now, it's disputed, did he say it and did he come back and correct it? But I believe that they're going to take the safest quarterback, and I believe that's Sam Darnold at the number 1.
And finally, the NFL says they're considering changing pass interference from a spot-on-foul penalty to a 15-yard penalty. CC, does the pass interference rule need adjusting?
The pass interference penalty right now, in the way the league has governed, the way the rules have changed, if you look at all the rule changes in the last 15 to 20 years, it's been to the benefit of the offense. Very seldom have they adjusted the defensive rules to be able to help. But, man, you're talking about something that drives fans crazy, pull their hair out, is just a little ticky-tack, a judgment pass interference call where, man, the team goes from being backed up to now they're at midfield, or they're at midfield and now they're in scoring territory. To also, when you get penalized inside the end zone, that goes right to the 1-yard line. There's nothing more penal in the game than the pass interference. I believe that it should be adjusted, a lot like college football, because we throw the ball more. The chances of pass of it happening are a lot more prevalent, and it changes the course of games. I don't think teams will just start having 15-yard penalties if they do change the rule. So it's one of them kind of things that, will we much rather have the big hit down the field, or do we think guys will start grabbing more because it's less penal? I don't think guys will do that, because 15 yards, that's a personal foul. When you see 15-yard penalties, typically the offensive team is going to score some points. So I would like to see an adjustment to be able to help out the defense.
I would like to see an adjustment, but not the exact adjustment they're talking about. Because you know, I love the spectacular play. And I am afraid that if you make it to where it's just a 15-yard penalty, that what you're going to have is guys, when they get beat for potentially a touchdown, just tackle the guy and take the penalty. Do you of course, remember when the face mask, there used to be 2 versions of it.
Yep.
A 5-yard minor face mask and a 15-yard personal foul face mask. I would like to see the NFL do that with pass interference. 15 and spot. Have it be a spot foul for truly egregious pass interference penalties, ones where it's clearly intentional, you've been beaten, you're trying to prevent the touchdown that the guy should have, and a 15-yarder for more of the judgment call ones. And there is a bit of a fringe benefit to that. I'd like to take everyone back to the final play of this NFL season. The Hail Mary Remember what Malcolm Jenkins did on that Hail Mary? He knew they were not going to call pass interference. So he just wiped out, I think it was Gronk on the play, he just wipes him out.
No, he wiped out one of the other receivers. Gronk was able to get back into the play and almost make the play.
Right, but
he
whomever,
blindsided
whomever it was.
Hogan.
He
Yes.
blindsided,
knowing there was not going to be a call.
Knowing they're not going to call a spot foul, final play of the Super Bowl, pass interference. And we see that on Hail Marys a lot, that guys are like, they're not going to call spot foul in the end zone. If there was the ability to have it be a 15-yard foul, then maybe you wouldn't be able to do that. And maybe the guys would be a little more cautious in those individual situations. I know people don't love the referees having more judgment calls, but I think this might be a happy medium. Have the 15-yard variety and the spot foul variety. That's something I would like to see if the NFL would potentially consider. So that would be my solution.
Why don't you just call Roger? You have so many great ideas. I mean, we have to hear them all. Why doesn't he?
I got other rule tweaks you want to know. By the way, illegal contact shouldn't be an automatic first down. Just 5 yards, do it again. No 3rd and 13.
Every once in a while, I take some of the one or two of his little concepts and take them into the meeting.
Yeah. He called them little concepts.
Yeah, he did. That's fine.
Nick has spent years developing these. Years. Little concepts. Another potential rule change after a season full of controversial catches and non-catches. The NFL is, in fact, making changes. NFL Vice President Troy Vincent says the committee plans to change parts of the rule when it comes to going to the ground, as well as to slight movement of the ball within the receiver's hands. CeCe, what's your reaction to these changes?
Well, I could say I initially was not very, very happy about it, but in search of, and I had to listen to Roger and a bunch of other people that Roger Goodell. I had to listen to him and other people on the committee, and they did have a tremendous influence on changing my overall view of them potentially changing the rule. And the reason why was because it wasn't like they just wanted to change the rule. They just really want to make the game better for fans. All right? They believe that the pros will adjust. When they change the illegal contact rule or targeting rule, the players have adjusted to that. And the new rule, if the fans want it, if it's going to be more entertaining, and the way they went about it. They looked at all the plays, and we've done this several times. So I've been fortunate enough to be on the committee that decides this. But when they looked at it, they went backwards compared to us looking at 50 plays and saying, is this a catch? Is this not a catch? It was more of, would you like this to be a catch?
And how can we adjust the rules to make this a catch?
Right. Should this be a catch in the game? Would the fans want this to be a catch? So very seldom do you ever see rule changes where they're trying to help the fan and help the product that the fan is seeing on the field. In the catch, no catch rule, it's not about the players. It's really about the fans and their judgment of it, and Roger being a fan of football. So trying to make it more simple, because as you can see, this ball is in my hand, but I still have control of it. So now once a guy catches the ball, because of their skill level, can this ball still move and them still have possession of it? And that is, yes, I can understand that. And we have to build and embrace technology. When you have all the different angles and all the replays, you know that's going to come into play. So if we have the judgment this ball moves anything, any little bit, that it's not going to be a catch, you're going to be taking away a lot of spectacular plays that guys are making, taking away value from the game that the fans. The other part of it is going to the ground.
That's the part I want you to explain to the audience.
I mean, that part's going to be eliminated. They're going to make it simpler, so that part you don't have to worry about. So
how do you make it simpler?
It doesn't have to qualify as a catch, them surviving the ground. Okay. If they've had the other two elements being control and time, being time and 2 feet or one body part, then it would be a catch. That part, as far as surviving the ground, would be eliminated from it.
Let me let the audience know, as it is written currently, pre-change, if you are going to the ground, the catch process essentially has to start totally anew once you hit the ground. Like, that's what happened with Jesse James. It wasn't that he went to the ground. It was that once he goes to the ground, it doesn't matter that he had what I would have called possession pre-going to the ground. It was he got possession while going to the ground, so none of that's possession. He now hits the ground, doesn't have possession. It's a wrap for him. If in that play, once he hits the ground, the ball never comes loose and he rolls over, that would have been a catch.
Yes.
He survives the ground and then rolls over. The Des Bryant play, similarly, he's going to the ground. To your eye, it looks like he has possession, but by the way the rule is written, you can't.
By the letter of the rule.
You cannot legally, according to the rule the way it is written now, or the way it was written as of last night. We'll see how they change it. You cannot actually have possession until you have gone to the ground fully and then made your football move.
So would that Jesse James catch have been ruled a catch?
Yes, that would have been a catch.
Under the way we're going to change it.
Exactly right.
Yes.
Because they're going to the ground, and same with the Des Bryant play.
Sure.
Because he clearly had control of the football, but he didn't survive the ground.
Right. And the way the rule was written, neither one of those should have been catches. But when you look back to the game and the way they did it, and Troy Vincent leading up that group there with football operations at the NFL office, do we want these plays in the game? Do we want Des Bryant to catch that ball? We do. Do we want Jesse James to catch that ball? No, we do. So in changing the rule, those plays would be added to fans overall. But listen, pump your brakes a little bit. We're going to go through a growing period.
Yes.
Because our eyes got to adjust to the game. And, unless there's indisputable evidence, you're not going to be able to go to replay either.
Well, that is going to be the forgotten part of what Troy said yesterday. And that is the part that I personally like the most, which is they are going to try to re-emphasize to officials what your call on the field is the written gospel, barring something obvious.
Call it with conviction.
Call it with conviction, and if upon replay it is glaringly obvious you got it wrong, then change it.
But what do you mean if it is obvious on replay? Do they have to go to replay?
No. So the way what was happening this year, I felt very often, was there was a play was called on the field, a catch. And then by your 7th replay in super slow-mo from a third angle, you see, there may have been a bobble.
Right. It gets challenged. It gets challenged by the coaches.
Challenged, or if it's on a scoring play.
Right, but the refs aren't doing that. The coaches are doing that.
No. What the refs were doing, in my eyes, was almost looking for reasons to overturn it.
Oh, okay.
And what Troy said yesterday is, we are going to go
back to the old standard,
which is the call on the field. You need, remember, incontrovertible video evidence. The most important word there is incontrovertible. No, if the call on the field was a catch or, by the way, an incompletion, if we are going to switch it, we need it to be clear to everyone. What we can't have is a call switched that people are then arguing about. Right. We can have a call stand that people say, it should have been overturned. What we can't have is that you maybe got it right on the field, use replay to get it wrong. Because that, as a fan, you're talking about the fans.
Yes.
There's nothing more frustrating as a fan watching a game than feeling like replay screwed me.
Right.
Like, the refs got it right, and now technology, now it's different if replay, the refs clearly got it wrong. Replay helped them get it right, even if that goes against you.
Just quickly, this is now the second time we're having a rule change, right? A couple years ago, they tweaked the catch rule just a little bit. Are you happy with where we're going now? Is this something that could stand in the NFL? No, Nick's laughing.
He's accepting of it. Cece's done a good job of accepting this.
Right, I love this game. And I think that when you make adjustments to make the game better for the people watching the game, it's not going to hurt the history of the game. It's not going to hurt how the game is played. No, it's only going to enhance fans. We're trying to get people to fall in love with football, not fall out of love with football. We shouldn't have 4 or 5 calls every Monday and the fans don't know what they're watching, all right? They spend their hard-earned money to watch this game. They should know the product. They should be able to sit there and be like, that's a catch. That's not a catch. All right? And so I think that will keep the NFL one of the most popular sports, acquiescing to the fan, and they've done a good job. Raj, you know.
Very nicely said. Big R, right? Hey, coming up, how do the Celtics keep winning without Kyrie Irving in the lineup? Next on First Things First. Welcome back to First Things First. We're now joined by NBA analyst Sarah Kustok. How you doing, Sarah?
Good to see you guys.
You're becoming a regular.
No.
Listen.
That's a callback from yesterday.
Happen again, Sarah.
I'm seeing LeBron. I'm calling a Cavs game Sunday, so I'm going to get the background. But I've been practicing.
Ketta, Brian, y'all get her booked even more. I was getting ready to say, welcome a regular to our show, but now we just increased your contract.
All right, I have to just real quick tell the audience.
Little backstory.
Yesterday, we showed LeBron embracing Joe Thomas. I foolishly mentioned to the audience that when CeCe was at a game in Miami. LeBron and CeCe made eye contact. In Cleveland, pardon me. Yes. LeBron and CeCe made eye contact, and that is what LeBron did to CeCe, the little bow with the legend.
You don't even know what you just did, Sarah.
Sarah, you are one of my favorites, but never again. Never, ever again.
So
take a break. All right, let's talk some Kyrie Irving. He's missed. Stop calling me ma'am. You might as well call me Jenna. He's missed the last 4 games with a sore left knee, and now will reportedly be seeking a second opinion. But that doesn't mean the Celtics are done competing. Last night, Boston snapped the Thunder's 6-game win streak with a 100-99 win. Celtics have gone 2-2 in Kyrie's recent absence. They're still firmly in second place in the East. Sarah, how have the Celtics been able to compete without Kyrie and basically a whole host of other players that are in and out with injuries?
I think this was said when the trade happened, and he talked about what is Danny Ainge's most valuable asset. Brad Stevens.
Wow, well said.
He's the guy. He is the reason this team is at the point they're at. And this goes back to the beginning of the season. 2-2 since Kyrie's been out, but one of those losses, a double overtime loss to Washington that they could have won. They lost by 3 points, I think, to Houston. In a lot of these losses and in close games and the wins, it's the system. It's the system they put in. It's the belief that Brad Stevens instills in them. And I think you see it if they are able to have a chance at the end of the game. It's a type of play calling. It's the out of timeouts, the way in which Brad Stevens is able to draw up sets, the execution of that. It starts at the defensive end for this team, how well they work together. But it doesn't matter what personnel you plug in. They understand where to be. They understand their roles. And it's similar to me. There's a lot of similarities now you're seeing with San Antonio, Greg Popovich, how he plugs in players. It doesn't matter who the personnel is. It's because of the system and how they run things and the understanding that starts during training camp. But I think that's where it all begins.
Listen, for me, you are preaching my gospel when it comes to Brad Stevens. I think aside from Greg Popovich, he is clearly the best coach in the NBA. And I think including Greg Popovich, when it comes to end-of-game, out-of-timeout situations, nobody puts their team in a better position to win. You then add to that, people talk about Danny Ainge a lot, but also I'm going to mention a name we've never said on the show, Mike Zarin, a member of that front office for a long time, who has an analytical background. Why does that matter? Think of the end of the game last night. They're down 2. This is something 75% of NBA teams simply don't understand. They still hold to this old crazy axiom of at home you play for overtime, on the road you play for the... No. You got to think about it like this when it comes to shoot a 3 to win or play for overtime. Unless you have a wide open dunk or layup, the percentages are so clear you should go for the win. Because if overtime's a coin flip, let's just say overtime's a 50-50 proposition, even if you're getting a 60% shot from 2, you then have 60% of 50%. That's a 30% chance to win. So as long as a three-pointer is better than a 30% shot, that's the play to go with. The Celtics, I know the math is nerdy. Trust me, it's right. And the Celtics do that better than everyone. If they go for 2 last night, Jason Tatum, it looked like, had a layup. He had a layup to force overtime. He kicks it to an average three-point shooter. That is the right play. So many teams don't make that play. I feel like that has been instilled from the front office down to Stevens, down to the players. And that's how I feel like they've gotten 6 wins this year they had no business getting.
There are also things don't talk about that are important. Their basketball development. People always talk about the head coach. People don't talk about the systems. How, when you have young players, because your 2 stars are out. So how are the Celtics doing it? They must be developing these young players. You talked about Tatum. His development as a 20-year-old player without playing with superstars. It's hard to play in the NBA. Physically, it's taxing. Mentally, it's taxing. And let alone, you're playing with guys you weren't expecting to be playing with. So the head coach is doing a tremendous job. Danny Ainge has done a good job, but their basketball developed, and they're developing of young players and plugging them in, have them play well in critical situations. I mentioned this on the show a couple months ago. I think they're a couple years away from competing for a title. They still got a lot of picks, all right? Gordon Hayward still hadn't played 4 quarters of basketball with the Celtics, but I'm concerned about Kyrie's knee. Yeah. These other guys are developing. There was rumors about Kyrie's knee when he left Cleveland. You know, did he need a procedure? He potentially threatened to maybe sit out and have his knee worked on. So I'm not surprised that they're having problems with his knee, but I'm really surprised with him out, with Smart out, that they would still be able to play a game like they did last night and be able to steal a game away from one of the hottest teams in the NBA.
Well, and I watched Shane Larkin was a guy who was playing overseas last year. I watched him in Brooklyn the previous year for the entire season, not even close to the type of player that we're seeing. You got a guy like Greg Monroe, who Brad Stevens is utilizing in a way that best suits
anybody in the league could have had
strike.
Greg Monroe.
Anyone could have had him. How they're utilizing him. Even Jaylen Brown didn't play, of course.
Right.
He's running, but look at the development of him throughout the course of this season. Terry Rozier.
Yes.
I mean,
Terry Rozier was a guy that was. People, I may have been one of them, poked fun at Danny Ainge for desperately. You can't include Terry Rozier in a trade. No. Terry Rozier's off limits. And we're like, what are you talking about, Terry Rozier? Terry Rozier's been good. Like, he's been the player that only the Celtics thought he could become. And the one other thing that, in addition to the player development, and this is one of the reasons why I think people fairly did have some questions about the Celtics come the postseason, but why they're so dangerous in the regular season is they seem to have a playoff intensity on defense every single night. Now, why would that make you question about the postseason? Is typically most teams are able to kick it up a notch in the postseason. I feel like the Celtics are operating almost on max capacity on that every night. That is a testament to, I believe, the coaching and the testament, of course, the players deserve credit for executing it, but the culture you instill of, this is how we're going to have to win games, guys. We're going to have to win games by competing every possession and making it hard to score. It is a pain to play Boston. It's not fun to go play Boston. Like, you know, you're going to have to work. It's going to be physical. Marcus Smart's going to be breathing right in your face. Like, it's just not an enjoyable team to go up against.
And they've done it in different ways with play. At first, you got guys like Marcus Smart or guys that are versatile that can guard multiple positions. Now they're doing it with play. They can go big. They can go small. They can play different ways and play at a different pace.
Let's bring it back to Kyrie Irving a second. How worried are you about him? Because what you're reading is, well, he could be back the next game, or he could have surgery next year, or Danny Ainge said, or he could have surgery the year after that, or maybe even the year after that. So it seems like they're not exactly sure what his health is and where he's going to be?
I think Kyrie's going to be a little bit like Dwayne Wade, a guy who struggles with his lower extremities. Now, Dwayne Wade, he was able to get more years in the league before he got injured like Kyrie. Kyrie's already been hurt a couple times. He's already had procedures done to his knee. When he has the type of game that he has, you worry about his lower extremities. Isaiah Thomas, a guest friend of the show, he tells us about small guys. Man, their lower extremities, their legs and stuff, when they start to bother them, like that cuts their. You don't see small guys 6'2" and under. You don't see them playing 15 years in the NBA. Not as premier players. There's a reason why, because they get worn out. And Kyrie, I think this is something that we'll continually have to watch.
Yeah, and his game is predicated on his quickness. So to your point, not having that explosive nature may affect him.
And the discussion with Kyrie is whether or not they need to remove the screws he had put in his knee when he broke his kneecap in the NBA Finals the first year they went to the Finals in Cleveland. Here's what I am confident saying. I do not have sources on this, but it's my intuition. What the Celtics will not do is make the mistake with Kyrie that I bet at least they feel or the player feels they made with Isaiah Thomas, which is have a guy play through an injury when you can't win a championship. Like, with all due respect to the Celtics, they cannot win a title this year, even if Kyrie plays. So what you can't do is damage his ability to be healthy going into next year, damage his ability to be the player he should be because you force him to.
And their opinion might be a little different if they had Hayward playing.
Oh, absolutely.
But to me, this is why he's getting a second opinion.
Correct.
Because they saw no structural damage initially, and they said arrest. So to me, that's why you continue to check on it.
All right, Sarah, stick around. Coming up, is it time to consider the Houston Rockets as the best team in the NBA? Next on First Things First. Hey, guys, welcome to First Things First. Good morning. I'm Jenna Wolf. That is the Hall of Famer, Chris Carter. This is a very dapper Nick Wright. What?
Oh, my lapel pin.
I haven't seen that. Usually it's the flowers.
It's brand new. It's the Trinidad flag. This was given to us by friends in Trinidad that are amazingly, maybe because it's an hour later there, I'm not quite sure the reason, huge first things first fans.
What about they like you?
Well, yeah, but I didn't know that. I didn't
one.
know the folks in Trinidad were caring so much about American sports. Those took a trip there. Some of the police officers in Trinidad pulled over their car to say, "Where's Chris Carter?" I said, "He is not with me in Trinidad," but asked about Jenna Wolf, so I wanted to represent them and their culture, and so wearing the flag this morning.
Two things that was overlooked. One, you said they probably watch because the show starts an hour later, so if the bosses are watching, if that's something you want us to do, we are happy to wrap our heads around starting an hour later. And number two, we're also big in Jamaica. On the island of Jamaica, they are big fans of First Things First.
Good to know that.
Tomorrow,
as well.
I'll be draped in the Jamaican flag where I was born, by the way. So it'll be a theme. You're next.
Welcome
CeCe.
to the show.
Pick a
Thank
country.
you so much. CeCe's big in the States.
In the States.
That's where he's big.
All of them.
That's pretty important.
All the states. Fact, the best record in the East belongs to the Toronto Raptors. Fact, the best player in the East is Cleveland's LeBron James. So Raptors versus Cleveland last night, you know, best record versus best player, and best player won. LeBron James, after allowing a season-high 79 points in the first half and trailing by 15 to the Raptors, LeBron and the Cavs took over, beating the top seed in the East 132-129. This was a close one. LeBron, 35 points, 17 assists, 0 turnovers. Here's LeBron on if he sent a message.
No. It's a good win for us just because how depleted we are with our roster and everything that's been going on. It's a good win for us versus a very good opponent. But I don't need to remind anybody what my teams are capable of doing. So that wasn't a factor.
All right, CeCe, let's talk. It was a great game. This is a great game because it became a great game at the end. How meaningful was last night's game for both of these teams?
Before the game tipped off, I was getting ready to send out a tweet. This is a must-win for Toronto because I really thought it was important. Toronto was coming into Cleveland in a tough stretch, playing 3 games in 4 days. They played Sunday, lost a tough matchup, had gone to Orlando, had played the night before, so they were on a back-to-back. DeRozan didn't play in Orlando, though, so he was only playing Sunday's game and then this game. So coming into Cleveland with all the injuries, Cal Korver getting the awful news that his brother had passed away, he wasn't going to be with the team, so prayers with Cal and his family.
Of course.
Great guy. And also the team realizing, wow, something else happened. So Cleveland, during the day, they go to shoot around. They get the news that Cal's not going to be there. So they go through mourning with one of their teammates who's not going to be there after everything else that they've been through. The coach not being there, the other inconsistencies in the lineup. And then Toronto gets out to the big whopping lead. So I thought they had to win this game. It was going to follow up, wow, this is what Toronto had to do. But Cleveland's comeback, I believe, was in a must-win situation for Toronto because you could even see with the additions that Toronto has, their bench, it is stronger. Man, they are a better team, but they still don't have an answer for LeBron. Like, they don't have anyone to guard LeBron. Like, they're trying to switch up. Sherbak, he can't guard LeBron. And
Pascal Siakam was trying to check.
He gave LeBron the most problems.
Right.
You know, so I thought that was a little bit promising. But at the end of the day, I mean, LeBron has their number. Coming into this game, they were 1-7 in the last 8 games in Cleveland, the last 3 years. Now, if you can't win in Cleveland, I don't care if you have home court advantage because, to me, this is more mental than it is about what the numbers are.
So why do you think they're the better team?
Which team?
Toronto. You said Toronto's the better team, but they can't.
No, they're a better all-around. Like, they really are. But LeBron is their kryptonite.
Yeah.
They don't have an answer for LeBron. All around, you would take their roster. Besides LeBron, the coaching situation, Casey's done a great job there. I mean, but the numbers are just overwhelming as far as LeBron's dominance of Toronto. And I thought it was really important, too. LeBron's got a lot of new guys with him. They haven't seen LeBron do this to Toronto.
Right.
So for them, it was more like make-believe.
CeCe, you went into it thinking it might be a must-win for Toronto. I went into it thinking Toronto should maybe play nobody. They got the 1 seed locked up. They have nothing to gain in this game, in my eyes. They weren't going, even if they won that game, they weren't going to get a mental edge on LeBron. Maybe on some of the fringe players with Cleveland, but because Cleveland had the built-in excuses.
If they could have followed up the second half with something similar to the first half, that would have really helped.
If they'd have blown them out, sure, absolutely.
I mean, the way their bench played, because their bench players would be able to gain more confidence because they haven't been there the last 3 years.
I didn't see a blowout coming. Now, the first half, the Cavs, I sent out a tweet. I was like, I'm really impressed by the Cavs' inspired effort on defense. I mean, it was egregious defense, by the way, by both teams, essentially in the first half. But teams. Toronto was extraordinary in the first half. I didn't see a blowout coming. And I thought maybe Toronto would say, you know what, Cleveland, we're not showing you nothing till the Eastern Conference Finals. We're going to take this game off. They obviously didn't. They had their full complement of players, except for C.J. Miles, who was out. Mm-hmm. And this was the worst possible result for the Raptors. This was worse than being blown out because you had them, and then what happened? LeBron executed that zero dark 30 he talks about come the playoffs, and there was no answer. Jenna, you have asked me all year long, are you worried about the Cavs? Why are you not worried about the Cavs? That is why I've never been worried about the Cavs and this conference. Because when you have that guy, and he can do that, activate that level of play. Now, the 17 assists, 0 turnovers, even by LeBron standards, is somewhat unprecedented to go along with 35 points. But at least 90% of that is what we will expect to see from him night in, night out in the postseason. The Raptors do not have an answer. And when the game ended last night, this is what I was thinking about. When the Cavs are up 3-1 in the Eastern Conference Finals, and they've won Game 4 in Cleveland, this is the game that people will remember. This is the game where Cleveland reminded everyone that if you don't have either a way to just send waves at LeBron or an overwhelming level of talent the way the Warriors do in a playoff series, when he played 39 minutes last night. In the playoffs, he's going to play 43. So there's going to be fewer minutes where it's just Cleveland's bench against your bench. You don't have an answer for that.
After the game last night, Larry Drew, who's in for Ty Lue, who's off on medical leave, said there's always one game that you can look to over the course of the season that's a turning point game for your team. It could be early on, it could be late, it could be somewhere in the middle. But it is a significant turning point. And he said for us, with 5 players out, with our head coach who's out sick, for LeBron to come in up against this Toronto Raptors team, this was a turning point game. Do you believe that?
It was a big game for him. It was a big game. It also could be the game, too, that George Hill got back on track. Because regardless of LeBron played a once-in-a-lifetime game. We haven't seen that game. Is that true? I mean, right?
No player in NBA history has ever had more than 30 points, more than 15 assists, and 0 turnovers. It's never happened before.
Never happened. But if George Hill don't show up, like if they don't have a number 3. So for me, yeah, monumental. Yes, it was great that they got the defense and put some effort into it. But if they don't have a number 3, and I believe that to be George Hill, if they don't get that constant contribution from a number 3, I know what Love's going to give me. 18 to 24, about 8 to 12 rebounds. That's what he's going to give me. He's going to be there for LeBron. He's going to be able to knock down shots. We saw him knock down the corner shot at the end of the game there, the big 3. If Kyle Korver hits that in the finals last year,
in Game 3.
So we know we have that in Kevin Love. But if they don't have a number 3, to me, it's still, I don't care how good LeBron plays. Like, they needed that type of effort to be able to win that type of game. But they also needed that 22 from George Hill in those crucial spots.
And Sarah Kustok, who's going to join us later, she mentioned about how she thought last week when Kevin Love comes back and the spacing is that much better, that will help George Hill. That will help the backcourt, just having Love out there as a spacer.
How does it help George Hill?
Because you all of a sudden have another shooter out there that you have to be concerned with. Because LeBron is always a threat to drive, you're going to have to sag off some other players. You don't want to sag off Love because he's such a good shooter. So all of a sudden, George Hill has some more open shots. But JR had more open shots. Jose Calderon, who, by the way, I thought was going to be the 14th man on this team and consistently has been a good player.
Yeah, apologize to him.
Listen, Jose, I thought you were done. I thought you were a veteran leader. I didn't think you would be the best point guard on this team through 74 games. But there's one thing you mentioned, the pass to Love on what was essentially the game-clinching basket. They were up.
LeBron could have shot it.
LeBron could have shot it. And that play is the play that since day one of LeBron's career, he's been criticized for. LeBron's entire career, we've said, man, Kobe would have taken that shot. Mike would have taken that shot. And LeBron has refused to give in to the noise, to give in to the narrative that there is some type of sports machismo that goes along with I'm taking the last shot, as opposed to I am generating for my team the best shot.
You wanted to take the shot. Well, you think he's going to take the shot.
We've been taught that that is what you're supposed to do. And by the way, Game 3 of the finals last year, he did it. And maybe if he takes a bad shot, he makes it. And maybe they win that game.
Yeah.
But LeBron is robotic in his dedication to we are making the right play. And last night was an example as to why, over the course of time, that is why, as much as any reason, that is why I believe he's the greatest player ever. Because he will make the right play no matter what the media, no matter what former players, no matter what other people say you're supposed to do in that spot.
Team first.
He got the best shot for his team. That was a huge win last night.
35 points, 17 assists, 0 turnovers. These two teams will match up again on April 3rd in Cleveland.
Took Nick 11 minutes to say he was the greatest
player of all time. Okay. I had 10, so I'm out. Dang it. All right, we'll try again tomorrow. Hey, coming up.
I told you he was going to get it in there.
I mean, straight facts.
Don't say it again.
Straight
facts. Is Sam Darnold now a lock to go #1? We've got the answer next on First Things First. Full disclosure, when I post my workout videos, I rarely shoot them in the rain. Can't run as fast, not as accurate with my burpees. Sam Darnold does not feel the same way. The projected first pick in this year's draft did take part in USC's pro day in the rain and was very accurate. The USC standout quarterback wowed a crowd of coaches, GMs, draft experts. Our Joel Klatt was there, and here's what he took away.
He had one of the most, I would say, best pro days I've seen in a long time. Coming away from today, and this is the earliest I've said this in this process, the New York Giants are on the clock because I think the #1 pick was totally solidified today.
Ooh. Cece, how hard will it be for Sam Darnold to now live up to the hype? There's a lot of hype surrounding him now.
Well, any of the players that's drafted first, regardless if it's a quarterback, regardless if it's a defensive end, if you are in that position in the league, they're saying you're the best prospect for pro football. So you're always under. You get the biggest contract and, yes, typically the biggest expectations. Sam Darnold, I believe, is the best he's the safest of all the quarterbacks. I believe with his work, I believe him throwing the ball, his ability to be able to be accurate with the football, to be able to make the right decisions with the football. I believe he is a superstar in the NFL. But living up to the hype, I believe a lot of that has to do with the Cleveland Browns. You know, what else are they going to do? Now, they've helped him out. He's done his part. Josh Gordon is there. All right? Jarvis Landry has been traded for. Do they end up getting Barkley with #4? Because for me, if they do that, he's going to be able to live up to the hype. I know how important it is to get supported as a quarterback, let alone the quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. They are looking for someone to take the steering wheel and turn the history of this franchise around. I believe Sam Darnold is that guy, but it is still, that first pick is important, but that fourth pick is just as important because you got to put some weapons around the kid so that he can flourish in the NFL, because I believe Sam Darnold is going to flourish. But every year we go through all these prospects, and we act like these guys can't miss. Like 3 or 4 of these guys will be top 10 quarterbacks in 3 or 4 years. I believe Sam will be a star, but I believe there's a star in every crop of quarterbacks, and also there is a bust. If you look at the last couple years that we've seen, look at last year's draft. Who did we have? Deshaun Watson. All right? Now, I believe the jury's still out on Trubisky. I believe he's going to be a quality starter. But also look at the Browns had. Who they drafted? They drafted Deshaun Kaiser. He threw 20 interceptions as a rookie. Now, people were saying great things about him a year ago. So let's just be careful in analyzing these quarterbacks to realize that it's hard being a quarterback in the league. It's hard living up to the expectations. I do believe Sam will live up to the expectations of being the #1 pick, but there will be at least 1 or 2 busts of those 4 or 5 quarterbacks that are ranked the top ones, Jenna.
And even let's disregard the bust for a moment and talk about the quarterbacks that work out. You said something really interesting to me the other day when we were talking about these quarterbacks. And you said, let's not just anoint one of these guys that he's going to be a top 5 quarterback in this league.
Yes.
And so once you said that, I started thinking about it and looking at it. So I expanded it to like the 7 best quarterbacks in football right now. In no particular order, this is not Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, Big Ben, Russell Wilson, Carson Wentz, and I think for a long time, maybe not anymore, for a long time, Phillip Rivers is in that category.
Right. Only half of those guys were first-day starters.
Well, and, Cece, more than half of those guys have been in the league a dozen years. So it's not, when we say get in the top 5, you got to keep in mind, Brady's been in there for 12 years.
Yes.
Breeze has been in there for 10 years. Rodgers been in there for close to 10. Big Ben's been in there for close to 10. Carson Wentz is the only new guy. Russell Wilson's going into year 7.
And what's the point? That it's going to take a long time for us, the jury's out?
My point is that club that people are like, okay, if you hit on Darnold, if you get it right with Darnold, you're getting a top 5 quarterback. Maybe not.
No, you need to adjust that.
Right. I feel like the Panthers hit on Cam. He's only been a top 5 quarterback 1 year of his career. I think the Falcons hit on Matt Ryan. He's only been a top 5 quarterback 1 year of his career.
Yes.
The idea that you can pick the right guy. You can be right that Darnold's the safest, or I can be right that Rosen has the most upside. And you still don't have a top 5 quarterback when they reach their full maximum potential. And that's the key and that's why your point on the system and the players around you matter so much. And I'm actually bullish on potentially, if Cleveland gets the quarterback right, what their future could be. Because I think while Jarvis Landry, I wouldn't pay him $16 million a year. I think
you got to stop counting people's money, man.
Okay,
okay, because I'm going to tell you what people are going to do.
Mm-hmm.
How long Nick Wright been on TV? How much that dude make? Nick, it is not our job to hate people on their money.
Hold on. Let me make this clear, because I'm not hating him on his money. The comparison to what I make in this television show is a little different because we don't have a hard cap system. The only reason I bring it up is because I think it's hard to evaluate whether or not a player is going to give you the production of the percentage of the cap. I don't begrudge anyone making their money. I hope everyone makes a ton of money. But so disregard the money thing. We can discuss that further.
Yeah,
my point is, I'm
going to remove that from your critique.
The on-the-field addition of Jarvis Landry, I think, is good. Josh Gordon, if he can continue staying on the right path. Sashi Brown got the Browns a boatload of future draft picks. I think Myles Garrett's a true blue chipper. So they could be in a good position. But that doesn't mean Darnold is going to be Carson Wentz and break into that club. The story on Wentz this year is, wow, we have a new star quarterback in this league. Jameis has...
Look at the personnel around Carson Wentz.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's not forget that. One of the best offensive lines, one of the best defensive lines. Actually, they went to the Super Bowl without Carson Wentz, so it lets you know as far as the supporting cast. The supporting cast becomes very important in their overall development and their arc in the league of how high they can go.
So is the bottom line, it's more about the team drafting the player than the player themselves? The team is going to make the player successful more than the player will make the team successful?
Ultimately, it's about talent. He's going to have to be a great talent, which I believe Sam to be. The reason why I believe Sam is the safest, also I believe he'll be the best long-term is because he's still one of the best athletes, all right? Jared Goff, right now, he throws the ball good, but he'll never be the athlete that Sam Darnold will be. And I just believe that Sam will get supported better there in Cleveland because I believe they're going to turn the franchise around.
All right, you might be the only one. Hey, coming out, we're going to switch gears a little bit. Confused when it comes to the catch rule? We might have an expert here. That's next on First Things First. All right, Dwight Howard turned back the clock last night. 32 points, 30 rebounds in a win over the Nets. The first 30-30 game in the NBA in 8 years, and only the second since 1982. Nick, how shocking was Dwight's dominant performance last night?
Listen, a 30-30 game, you mentioned it, we've only seen 2 since Moses Malone. Kevin Love did it 8 years ago as a Timberwolf. Dwight last night. Now, one note before we get to Dwight, just a reminder of what Wilt Chamberlain was as a basketball player. There have been 156 30-30 games in NBA history. Wilt is in first place with 124 of them.
Amazing.
Walt Bellamy is in second with 4 of them. So the whole NBA history combined has 32 compared to Wilt's 124. I'm glad Dwight did this because it's a good opportunity to remind people of the player Dwight Howard has been, which is a no doubt first ballot Hall of Famer, a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, an 8-time All-NBA player, a 4-time top 5 MVP guy who for some reason was compared, the expectation was, oh, he should go be Shaq. Shaq's 4 inches taller than Dwight Howard. Like, there are very few similarities between Shaq and Dwight. And if people want to say Dwight didn't quite live up to what his full potential was, I mean, sure, I suppose, but living up to whatever he lived up to, it got him to be the best center in this league for nearly a decade and one of the most dominant defensive players we've seen in the last 15 years. So I'm glad he's having a nice season in Charlotte. Nobody could have seen a 30-30 game coming, but I'm happy for Dwight.
Yeah, I'm one of those people that thought Dwight Howard should have been a lot better as a pro. He doesn't have one offensive move he can go to as a player. Like, he's known as a defensive player, also a rebounder. That's what he is. Did he reach his potential? Because as an athlete, when you see people, you wonder, man, can they get all the potential out of that body? And Dwight Howard, he might be a Hall of Famer. I don't have no vote on that. Don't even care. But he will not be a person that reaches with his skill level, with the body he had, as athletic as he was. Like, he should have been a better NBA player. And in that 10 years that you're saying he was the best center, it's also one of the worst 10 years in NBA history as far as lack of dominant big men.
All right. Hey, after plenty of controversy and discussion
and
on
he's
what
made a lot of money.
And what isn't, and what should, and what shouldn't be a catch, it seems we finally have some clarity heading into next NFL season. After Troy Vincent confirmed there would be changes, Al Riveron, the VP of officiating, detailed exactly what those changes likely will be. All right, here we go, guys. The competition committee recommended that a reception will constitute 1, control, 2, 2 feet or another body part, or 3, a football move. So break this down a little bit for us, CC. Take us through what this means moving forward now.
What it means actually is that now you're going to have to start looking for different things. So now say, for instance, if a receiver is potentially falling to the ground, he's going across the middle, they throw him the football. He has the ball in his hand. He has possession of the ball. He takes 1 or 2 steps. Now he's getting ready to go to the ground. The referees and fans are going to have to determine, did he take a 3rd step before he hit the ground? Because you don't have to survive the ground now, but now do you have something that is common to the game or another step? So those are things that we're going to have to watch. They did a very good job, Al and the rest of the committee, as far as getting the verbiage very, very simple, because that was one of the complications in trying to adjust this rule. How do we adjust the language? Do we put a 3rd step in there? So through a process of elimination, what was the easiest way to be able to describe it? As a move, a 3rd step, something that's common to the game. Those things I'm in favor for, because I think that fans, we have to give them time to adjust to this. But I believe that they got it right in trying to simplify and allowing the players not to have to survive the ground.
And I hope fans quickly adjust this, because the league is doing this for the fans. You were in those meetings. This is much more popular, this rule change, amongst fans. It is much less hotly debated amongst fans whether or not they should change the rule. Fans are nearly unanimous. Yeah, of course, change the catch rule. Then amongst the players and the people in that room. You guys had as you described, a very, I don't want to say contentious, but a contested discussion about how you should do this.
Bill Cowher has no back down in him. Much respect, Bill.
Yeah, so Bill and CC were on different sides of this equation. But listen, you are one of the world's foremost experts on this, not just because of your career catching the football, but because you've been in these meetings. And you and I have talked off the air about potential side effects of this. So I want to ask you a few questions. One is that I know you were concerned about. Are we going to have a lot more fumbles?
Yes.
Because I want to explain to the audience, and then you can expand on it. If I'm running across the middle and I catch the ball and I'm going to the ground, and I get my 2 steps, and maybe even I get a knee, but no one touches me.
No one touches me.
And then I hit the ground.
That's going to be the common call.
No one touches me, and I hit the ground, and that ball pops loose.
Let's not forget what we've learned all our life. The ground can't cause a fumble.
Right. But in this instance, so I'm running across the middle. No one touches me. Couple steps. I know you hate when I mimic football, but I'm going to do my best here. Yeah. No one touches me.
Jenna hit you.
I fall to the ground, and when I hit the ground, the ball pops loose. That's been an incompletion. Now, that's a fumble?
It's a catch and a fumble. So, yes, a live ball.
Okay.
And one of the reasons you were not necessarily in favor of this was not just because of more fumbles, but because of what you saw on film about what happens during a fumble scrum?
Right. People don't realize, like, all the inadvertent whistles and all the sometimes stoppage in play. Sometimes players are still playing. Defensive players have been taught. They practice this all the time. Anytime the ball hits the ground, pick the ball up and run it the other way. Make the referee make the decision. So we're going to have some confusion on some of these plays, especially early, because the defenders will continue playing through the play. When we decide to change the catch rule, you have to understand and you have to have a greater appetite for fumbles being involved. Now, what I'm worried about is players getting hit. Will some players stop playing because they thought they heard a whistle? And other players that continue to play and someone gets hurt because they don't know, because now we're in a time that they're not used to.
Just real quick, I want to explain one other thing to the audience. We have spent a ton of time talking about the Jesse James play. The Jesse James play, you don't have to worry about the fumble because he crosses the goal line. So then the world stops. Like, it has control. He takes the 2 steps, knee hits, cross the goal line. That's not a fumble. But if that happens at the 5-yard line, and if instead of repossessing it when the ball comes loose, it squirts loose, that can be New England ball if they pick it up. I know that was one of your concerns. Go ahead, Jenna. Another one of your concerns was we have done a lot of things to make the game easier for offenses, right? And that is that, do you think this is a further step in that direction?
Of course it is. It's easier to catch the ball. And now with the technology, with the gloves, like, this is not someone who played in the 80s, 90s, and 2000 hating on where the game is. This is just obvious. Like, the gloves make it easier to catch the ball. We have thrived throwing the ball. I did a chart with my man Dusty and presented it to them. It blew their mind. They couldn't believe how successful we were throwing the football.
More successful now than ever.
More than ever. So I'm saying, wow, you're getting ready to change something that NFL players, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends, they don't have no problem catching the ball. So to me, I understand the clarity in the bad plays, but also it's a rule that guys have thrived playing under those rules.
Does this make the game better? I think for the casual fan, it all gets a little complicated with all the minutia and the details of what is and isn't a catch. So the bottom line is this what the NFL wanted, just to make the game better, easier to watch, more fun to watch?
They want to simplify it for the fan, so they can enjoy. And so on Monday, we don't have those 3 to 5.
Right.
Yes.
And is this going to do it?
No. No, it's not going to do it, because they're going to find some other way to complain about other things. Like, this will help simplify it, but just watch the complications. Just wait till the season starts.
The side effects.
Yes.
Right.
I think the Monday conversation was a huge part of it, that they didn't like the fact that there would be these great games on Sunday, and on Monday we'd be calling Mike Pereira and say, is this or is this not a catch? But Cece's point on fans might find a new thing to nitpick, that's probably a safe bet.
That's what we do. Coming up, also, Mike Pereira had the busiest Mondays this entire season. Coming up, is James Harden the greatest offensive player in the history of basketball? Don't say it, Nick. Someone thinks so. It's next on First Things First. Welcome back to First Things First. NBA analyst Sarah Kustok is here. CC's new favorite NBA analyst because of the introduction.
I'm
she's
hanging
bringing
on
the
to it
heat.
as long as I can.
No. We're hanging on to you. You bring great NBA content. You're a regular on the show.
Thanks
a friend of the show.
Thanks for having me back.
Cross town. Holla. Yes.
All of it, Sarah. All of that.
I can't talk to him about basketball all day.
Oh, my gosh. All the hate this morning. Talking about my salary caps.
Trinidad, my brothers.
Talking about my pin.
Nick's wearing a pin because apparently First Things First.
We're big in Trinidad. He's smart.
He's smart, man. James Harden is likely going to win the MVP award. That much most of the NBA world can agree on. But his game aesthetically pleasing, some say not so much. Hey, looks aren't everything. I learned that back in high school. Don't tell that, thank you, to his head coach, Mike D'Antoni. D'Antoni, who many believe to be an innovational offensive mind, had this to say about the Rockets star.
Yeah, that's the best offensive player I've ever seen. It's just, he does things. They were running guys to him. He just steps a little further back and makes a three. And just, the way he can pass and see the floor, get fouls, layups, floaters, maybe a lob, maybe out to the corner. I mean, just, he has so many weapons, and now he's shooting those step back threes. It's impossible to guard. it's impossible.
Some big words there out of Mike D'Antoni. Sarah, how far off is he in his assessment of James Harden?
I hesitate going into James Harden's game because of the year he's having, because of how much I believe everything short of the best offensive player I've seen is accurate. He can score in so many different ways. The way in which we've seen him facilitate has been tremendous. But D'Antoni's saying the best offensive player he played with Kareem. He coached Kobe. I'm from Chicago, so Michael Jordan is it for me. You go through the list of players, Oscar Robertson, I could keep naming different players, and James Harden has been tremendous. But I also think you have to look at D'Antoni's style, how much that lends itself to why James Harden is able to put up the numbers he has, utilizing the type of talents he has. The game has changed. This is a different era. James Harden, for the last 6 years, has averaged about 10 free throw attempts per game, gets 8 or 9 points per game from the free throw line. A big part of that is the way in which they have changed how you can play defense. So I think there's a lot that goes into what we're seeing out of James Harden and what we've seen out of him the past couple seasons, but not over the duration of a career to call him the best offensive player that we've seen.
Listen, I think Harden should be the league's second ever unanimous MVP this year. I have been preaching this gospel for quite some time. I was in Houston when they traded for him. And I remember, because I'm such a stats nerd, looking at his per 36 numbers coming off the bench in OKC and believing Houston got a superstar. And in the last 4 years, he's led the NBA in points created. Just, points scored plus assists, points. There are so many things you can say that sound hyperbolic about James Harden that are, to me, very defensible. You want to argue he is the smartest offensive player ever, with the way he almost games the system with foul calls, with the way he absolutely understands the value of a 3 versus a 2. You can have that argument. Now it might be an argument, you have that argument. If you want to do what Daryl Morey said to me at the Sloan Analytics Conference a few weeks ago, that James Harden is the best isolation player ever. We can break it down. We can have that discussion as well. If you want to talk about where he's going to finish ranks among shooting guards all time, Jordan 1, and then there's Kobe, there's Wade, there's Jerry West. Is James Harden already in the top 5? I'll have that discussion. So I'm not here to knock James Harden, but to call him the best offensive player ever when he's not the best offensive player. Cece, you put it. Is there a franchise Harden's played for that he's the best offensive player in the history of that franchise?
Not that I know of, because the first thing that I thought of was, when he was in OKC. Man, Kevin Durant's a better offensive player, in my mind. I just get caught up on, I listen to what people say. If you do an interview, someone puts a microphone, television there, I just listen to what people say. Ever? Man, do you know how long ever is? I think people forget, because even to say that James Harden is the smartest, ever, we don't even have all the information to determine ever. Is he the smartest ever? Is he the best ever? I'm just talking based on my eyes, what I've seen.
Right.
And if you're going to do this, if you're going to make a comparison to a great of this era, you have to try to transition. So last night, what I was thinking about, what would Michael Jordan be like in that spread offense with today's rules, where you can't hand check a guy? Michael Jordan averaged 37 in the old rules where you could clothesline a guy coming down the lane.
Right.
So stop that right there. Now, imagine Kobe in recent history. Kobe is a better shot maker than James Harden. Now, as far as distributor of the basketball, drawing fouls and everything, people can argue those other things. But Kobe, to me, is a more dynamic offensive player. And I'll take you to current day. Kevin Durant. If you ask me, Kevin Durant is the best offensive player in the NBA. James Harden is special. This run that he's been on the last 4 years, it's been tremendous. And we're not trying to take any shine off of his MVP season. But if your coach opens his mouth and says something like that, we have to respond. And ever, man, people just lose. Ever, that's a long, long time.
Well, and when I was asking you about it in this franchise, if we talk about big men, you said you thought Akeem, as far as Rockets history, that Akeem was a better offensive player than Harden, just in the history, of his current franchise.
Yes. So that's the Durant in OKC, and now in Houston. I believe Olajuwon was a better offensive player.
I was just going to say, and we're seeing very special seasons out of James Harden the past 2 years.
Sure.
It's 2 years. It's 2 years, and take no credit away from what he's been doing, because it has been spectacular to watch. But going back to the the greatest ever. That's mind-blowing.
But are we all tainted a little bit just because his game is not as flashy as Kobe's or Jordan's or any of these other guys?
Listen, I think that if Harden continues on this pace, from a purely offensive perspective, you are going to be able to make the argument about him versus Wade, him versus Kobe.
Yes.
Like, as from a purely offensive perspective. Now, defense, Kobe was one of the best defensive guards ever. And I would argue Dwayne Wade is the single best shot blocking guard ever. Like, that specific skill set.
I don't think Harden's going to ever be able to approach Kobe, because what Kobe did in the low box, his ability to duplicate the Olajuwon shake, his ability to post up, and Kobe Bryant can play above the rim. James Harden can't do those two things right there. So for me, it'll be hard for him to ever be able to reach Kobe
I agree
Bean.
with that. We talk so much about James Harden and his three-point shot, his step back, and the analytics side, what he can do. And it has been deadly, but he's still shooting about 37% from three. He's not shooting 41, 42% from the three-point line.
And there's two names that haven't been mentioned that I think, like, listen, if we're talking about best ever on anything, we have to acknowledge Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
No.
Like, there's a reason he scored more points than anybody.
And I don't care how long he does it. He'll never do it as long as Kareem.
No, nobody will do it as long as Kareem. And Kareem creating the only, I believe, unblockable shot in NBA history in the sky. Like, we sometimes lump big men into one category. I said before the show, I don't think Harden's more of a dominant offensive player than Shaq or Wilt. And Cece brought up those guys it was less about skill and more about brute force, and I understand.
And the lack of other big people that could contend them.
And go ahead, Sam.
Well, I was just going to say, part of Harden, though, I think is his physicality matched with his quickness, and that goes back to what defenses can do with hand checking. And I think part of it is his strength and his ability to be explosive.
How much of his recent success, though, is from Mike D'Antoni's coaching and playing under that system?
Well,
and would he be this successful playing for someone else?
That's a good question. I think a big part is D'Antoni's system, the green light, putting the ball. I mean, to put the ball in his hands, that was before he became a point guard. We were thinking, is this going to work? And James Harden played the point guard position. He proved he could. Now he has a second ball handler in Chris Paul. But I think that's a major factor.
Yeah, sometimes, too, you give credit to the system. D'Antoni's system has always put up huge numbers. But we also have to look at James Harden, how much he's improved his game. When he left college, what type of player he was. In OKC, coming off the bench, what type of player he was. A coach can't put you in position to dribble the ball the way he does. All the moves that he has created, he has studied the game to understand what he can do within the rules. Like, he's amazing, I mean, in one-on-one situations. So I'm not going to give the coach credit for that, because I see D'Antoni's system every year, and you don't get those types of players because it's up to the player.
Right.
And James has developed his skill.
And Harden should have won an MVP and finished second in an MVP before D'Antoni got there, when Kevin McHale was there.
Yep.
Steph's first MVP, I thought the players awarded it to James. I thought it should have been James's MVP. So again, like, his coach put him in a tough spot for the conversation. Because all of us think he's the league MVP. All of us think the Rockets could win the title in large part because of him. But, I mean, is he the greatest offensive player ever? Like, of course not.
Just look up ever. Just look how long that is.
Look how long
Sarah,
ever.
stick around. Coming up, can the Raptors recover from what LeBron James did to them last night? Nope, franchise is going under. That's next on First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolf, and thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Make sure to subscribe and tell your friends, family, and coworkers about the podcast, which, by the way, is available on iTunes and all your favorite podcast apps. You can catch a fresh new episode every Monday through Friday on FS1, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern, 3:30 a.m. Pacific. So long, everyone.